Badlands. Explain those Badlands. That's a hell of a name.
We were sleeping. I've been sleeping. I've been turning away from a truth I wanted not to face. There is a wound that won't heal at the center of the galaxy. There is a darkness reaching like rust into everything around us. We let it grow, and now it's here.
How many men have you killed, my lord?
I don't know.
50? 100? Countless.
Countless has a nice ring to it.
And how many lives have you saved?
500,000. Population of King's Landing. Tell me if your precious Randy commanded you to kill your own father and stand by while thousands of men, women, children burned alive, would you have done it? Would you have kept your oath then?
Our time has come. We prepared. We grew stronger. Were you rested in your cradle of power? You were trusted to lead the Republic. But you were deceived. You assumed no force could challenge you. And now, finally, we have returned.
The visions are clear now. I see possible futures all at once. Our enemies are all around us. And in so many futures they prevail. But I do see a way. There is a narrow way through.
It's not a prophecy. It's a story that you keep telling, but it's not their story, it's yours. They deserve to be led by one of their own. What your people did to this world is heartbreaking.
We gave them something to hope for.
That's not hope!
We have survived by hiding from them, by running from them. But they are the gatekeepers. They are guarding all the doors, they are holding all the keys, which means that sooner or later, someone is going to have to fight them.
I wish none of this had happened.
So do all who live to see such times, but that is not for them to decide. All we have to decide is what to do with the time that is given us.
Forgive me. I did not see. I have failed you all.
You will bring me. John, I do not know what strength is like. I swear to you, I will not let the White City fall. Our people fail. Our people. Our people.
I wish you good fortune in the wars to come. And now it begins.
No. Now it ends.
Okay, people, welcome to The Narrative, episode 8, the show where we officially talk about the thing that I Trojan horse into every conversation anyway, not just on streams or at Garts, but in every single personal conversation that I've ever had. If you're wondering if that's true, you can just ask Mrs. Bright. She came up with a new term, I think, tonight. She said she is nap-trapped with the baby in the other room. So you might hear him when she goes to move him, but that is what it is. This is supposed to be kind of a celebration. It's week 1 of the Golden Age. We're going to review the whole Golden Age for you. My guest and I tonight, my guest is a Golden Age expert. We've both become experts in this stuff over the last few days. You don't really have to go anywhere else. We're going to tell you emphatically the answer of whether or not the Golden Age was a success and whether or not we should doom out. The reason I'm a little somber, as somebody, I think Bay Theater Dave reminded me in the chat just before the show, I'm going to miss that guy. I'm going to miss our boy Blue. You all know that he was hilarious. He was highly effective. He was a walking red pill suppository. He was absolutely fantastic at his job. If you think his job was ushering us, greasing the rails en route to the golden age. So my guest is going to come on tonight, and we could have picked all sorts of different little things, but it's a pretty big week for the golden age. So we're just going to talk about the golden age. I think that will provide us enough opportunity, enough material to discuss. I see there's already a good amount of people in here tonight. We're competing with a sports ball game that some people are going to watch. It's fake. As my policy, everybody knows, if a Boston team is winning and is contending, sports are real. When Boston teams are not contending, the sport is fake. The Chiefs will probably win on some bullshit due to fakeness. If you're here, hit the thumbs up, please. If you want to leave a boost, go to badlandsmedia.tv/boost. You can do that for the show. We'll get to Rumble Rants in the second half. And without further ado, or before we get to without further ado, I'm going to introduce the sponsors of tonight's show. And the first sponsor is our friends formerly known as EasyRx, our friends at the new Save Pulse. At Save Pulse, we're committed to keeping you and your family healthy with top quality medications like amoxicillin, azithromycin, ivermectin, hydroxychloroquine, and more. Our ordering process is streamlined for your convenience, and we pride ourselves on offering unbeatable prices. Now's the time to prepare for any health scenario. Head on over to badlandsmedia.tv/meds to stock up on essential antibiotics and viral care medications. Ensure you're ready for anything by visiting badlandsmedia.tv/meds. Don't forget to use the promo code BADLANDS at checkout to get a 10% discount on orders over $150. badlandsmedia.tv/meds, promo code Badlands. I like the rebrand. It's good stuff. They've been with us for quite a while, so we always appreciate that. And the narrative still has sponsors 8 weeks in. So I guess that's not a bad thing. And our other sponsor tonight are our friends at Life.
Are hot flashes and sleepless nights affecting your daily life? Then we have some good news for you. Introducing Life's Pureria Mirifica Plus, the all-natural solution to relieve the symptoms of menopause. While researching a natural remedy to relieve menopausal symptoms, medical doctor and best-selling author Christiane Northrup discovered the purest form of Pureria Mirifica available. Life contains phytoestrogens, which can help bring hormone balance and comfort to your body. Life is a real solution that has truly helped thousands of women to relieve menopausal symptoms such as hot flashes, night sweats, sleeplessness, and dryness. Traditional hormone replacement therapy may bring health risks, while Life has been safely used long-term by thousands. Just listen to what users of Life have to say.
I no longer have hot flashes, and the best part is I sleep like a baby through the night.
I no longer have symptoms of menopause, no heart palpitations, hot flashes, or heat surges. All gone.
Order your 30-day supply of Life today by calling the number on your screen. Not available in stores. Call now.
All right. Thank you to our sponsors. You can see their promos in the bottom of the screen, as always. Much appreciate that. Appreciate you guys being here. So without further ado, I'll welcome my guest. He's kind of like a young cub in this space. I'm going to try to teach him a thing or two. I don't even know if I can use many InfoWar terms, if he'll kind of get where I'm coming from, because we weave a lot. He also doesn't like talking very much. Neither me nor him are prone to rambling. So this is probably going to be the shortest episode of the narrative ever. But yeah, my guest is the one, the only Zak Paine, also known as Red Pill 78. How's it going, Zak?
Oh, it's going good, BB. Going good. And congratulations on that all-important middle-aged female demographic. Clearly,
yep.
You've got a type that turns in, and how could they not? Look at that mug. Look at that
I
mug.
saw, somebody I think it was last week, it was the first stream that Life had sponsored, and like 3 people in the chat were like, they know, Burning Bright knows the audience, or they know this audience.
They definitely have been paying attention.
At least I'm going to be honest with the audience and say, I have not sampled the product. Okay.
Well, there you go.
But, I'm sure people at the Guard can tell me about it. Either way, very much appreciate that. And appreciate you joining. I think, at the beginning, I've obviously been rotating through the Badlanders, and sometimes it just kind of happens that the stuff going on in a week is really geared towards somebody that I have on. Like there was Bitcoin stuff going on, so I had G on. This one, I think low key is great for you because you're the OG. Like of everybody at Badlands, I don't think that that's going out on a limb to say. Off the top of my head, I would say of everyone at Badlands for sure, you've been in this stuff probably since before we named it an InfoWar or called it that. So if you were going to be on a show, talk about a macro narrative, I think the golden age fits the bill.
I absolutely agree with you. And I have to say, this has probably been the best week. Well, it's definitely been the best week of the last 4 years, 100%. I mean, there's like really no contest, bar none. But I mean, even like politically in terms of President Trump's first term in office, I mean, he had a lot of like really great isolated moments and some like excellent spots where you got to cheerlead. But oftentimes what would happen is that something would inevitably get stalled, or, you know, the deep state itself, you know, the bureaucracy in Washington, D.C., they would fight back in whatever way they could. And this time, President Trump has essentially stood up in the middle of Washington, D.C., with a fully loaded Tommy gun. And he's got like a set of drums next to him.
A metaphorical Tommy gun.
Yes, a metaphorical Tommy gun, like in Minecraft. And he's just laying out sprays all across Washington, D.C. And everybody's ducking, and there's nothing else that they can do, because if they stand up, they're going to get hit. And those who do stand up, they pay the price in quite a spectacular fashion. I mean, I was thinking before you came in here, or before I came in here, when you were talking about, you know, Joe Biden being like the red pill suppository. I mean, that was like one of my first instincts when Biden was allowed to be inaugurated. Right. And I like that time was just like so awful for so many people. And I remember being in all these groups, and every single person was like, they're not going to let Biden be inaugurated. You know, this isn't real. And there's absolutely no way that they would let this happen to us. And the closer we got, like the more I came to accept that actually, guys, this is exactly what's going to happen. And, you know, the only thing that made sense to me was that by the very nature of Joe Biden's presence, he would act as that red pill, that awakening for so many people who could not be reached by Donald Trump, or who could not be reached by people like us during that first 4 years. And it wasn't necessarily because Biden was openly saying, hey, we're lying to you. Yeah. I mean, it was like by proxy, right? I mean, like, it's just obvious because of what they're doing. The corruption was on full display. And Joe Biden quite literally woke a vast percentage of this country up. Now, maybe those people didn't have the benefit of being there like during the time when the drops were live and everybody was sort of rallying around that stuff. Everybody was an anon. Nobody had revealed themselves yet. And you know, that was a special time, and that holds a direct place in my heart. Like, I would never trade that for the world. But like, to see Joe Biden essentially glaze Donald Trump, like indirectly for 4 years, that was a powerful thing. Yeah. And now immediately, as soon as he's gone, like the changes that we were expecting to happen during the first 4 years are now happening all at once. And it's been 1 week, not even, you know, a full 7 days yet. And so many things have taken place. And I just like wake up every morning and I just cannot wait to look at my phone. There were times during the last 4 years where I was like, I don't even want to look at social media.
What's the story to that? Yeah. And I think that feeling was even if you do engage with things on a narrative level. Like I'm something of a narrative extremist, as people know. And I think there's a little bit of a difference between that and the everything is fake. And again, I'm a defender of the everything is fake crowd. I think because I think that they're unfairly labeled the everything is fake crowd. I think that once you talk to people like Chris and Patrick for extended periods of time, you understand, and people that engage with them on the shows and everything understand that they're saying everything is fake until proven real, right? Right. We're coming out of this era of the InfoWar wouldn't exist. We wouldn't have a name for it. Anons wouldn't have been necessary, to your point, if we didn't come up in a zeitgeist, in a paradigm where the system was lying to us by matter of, as a matter of course, like as a core function. Patrick inverts the whatever the normal refrain is. We call it kind of Gunnell's razor, where he had said, never attribute to incompetence that which can be explained by malice.
Yeah.
And I think his inversion makes a lot more sense when you're in the info war than normies. I've said before on the show is that like one of the cognitive dissonance walls that I would surprisingly hit with family members who I would think are otherwise intelligent, reasoning people, even if they're liberal, like I used to be liberal, you can break out of that. It's an emotional cognitive dissonance wall. And I like what Patrick says about the malice thing, because I realized, I always use my mom as an example, that once you break through the logic layers with people, you're still going to hit an emotional wall that I think is what separates anons from a lot of normies, like truth people from a lot of normies. I think more people than we believe are capable of logical thought and progression. Maybe not as much as InfoWar people are, because we do it all the time, people in this audience. But I think more are capable of that than we think.
Yeah.
I think the hang-up is that was kind of accelerated during the Biden era and maybe broke through some of those walls is surely it can't be this simple, right? It's almost the irony. The deep state is so complex and interconnected, but I've said in my writing for years, their interconnectedness is a simplicity. It's actually their weakness, but people need to believe that they are capable of doing this stuff. They needed to believe that this evil exists. And it's like, yeah, guys, it really is as simple as that most of Congress is evil. Your presidents have been evil, and they are counting on you just not thinking that that's possible, which is most of where their power comes from, right? Besides all their systems, a lot of their power came from just people being unwilling or unable to believe that other people could be like this.
Yeah, that sort of layer of ignorance that hangs over people because they don't want to accept that evil is like truly that massive. Most people, I mean, you're walking around in your daily life and most people are normal people. Most of them are kind, decent folks who do not want to engage in psychopathic behavior. I mean, they will think of the needs of other people, even when they're not particularly good people. You know, I mean, like they might screw you over, but they're not going to try to kill you just so that they can get ahead of you in line or something like that. I mean, the problem in Washington, D.C. is that it's a haven for psychopaths. These people congregate together and they have no problem doing whatever is necessary if it means that their ends and their needs are met. And quite often that means that damage is done to a vast number of people. And then on top of that, you've got people who just enjoy killing people. They just enjoy the evil that comes along with it. I mean, you know, it's no coincidence that people who become psychopaths start off by torturing their pets, right? You know, it's like they get a taste for it and then they kind of branch out as they get older. And because they're psychopaths, they have a really easy time of mimicking regular human beings. But generally speaking, people have been unable or unwilling to accept that the evil is at the level that it is. And so many things that happened during the last 4 years only make sense when you put them into that context. You know, it's like, how in the world could this be happening to us? It's so obvious that this is bad for America. This is bad for the nation. This is bad for the people. But they're doing it because they're evil, because they enjoy watching us suffer.
Absolutely. And, you know, again, I kind of wanted to lead. This is going to be mostly a positive show because of the week we've had. But ironically, you said something there as well. Well, we both talked about that cognitive dissonance of the negative side of it. You mentioned in your opening take there that in 2020, especially January 2021, so many of us, I'll admit, I was falling into this as somebody who followed the Q drops from week one half, like 4 days, 3 or 4 days after the drops were around. I was on the chans at the time. I dismissed them at first. And then for me, I think Ghost had the same awakening where it was the Saudi purge was the thing to me. A buddy had told me about the drops and I was like, yeah, I mean, I was a black-pilled liberal at that point who was just laughing about how chaotic Trump was. But the Saudi purge, I was like, those fucking drops, we're talking about this.
Exactly.
You know, the rest is history. But 2021, I'm like, surely this isn't the plan, you know, for Biden and everything. There's got to be something else. Ironically, of course, then right after it did happen, you just go back into whether it's the drops or whatever. I mean, you can think of it through a logical progression. I often talk about the Hegelian dialectic. My kind of overarching thesis that I mentioned last week with Brad, the Trump's trick angle. I was talking to Zach about it before the show, the 3 acts of a magic trick. You can take that logical progression in so many different ways, but the Hegelian dialectic, problem, reaction, solution. One thing I've been writing about a lot lately is that isn't an evil thing, right? The Hegelian dialectic is not an evil thing. It's just a logical progression that maps cleanly onto how human beings think, how they order their thoughts. And my kind of supposition is that patriots have been reversing this on the enemy, saying like, all right, Trump's going to come out and diagnose the problem. He branded it, the deep state, the fake news, like he branded all the problems. He then engineered reactions to them, and now maybe we're going to solution. But what I wanted to pass to you is, this is week 1 of the Golden Age. It's surreal. It's strange. The story right now is the Golden Age. In the second half of the show, I want to get more into the Anon pathway and maybe the far future. But for now, that same dissonance that made a lot of us question whether or not they would truly allow Joe Biden to be the fake president for 4 years, I think you and I were talking before the show, there's a strange inversion going on right now in a lot of truthers' minds and Anon's minds, where I think we're seeing a lot of people go, surely they're not just allowing the Golden Age to happen right now, right? Like it's almost an inversion because we've been burned so many times and we're always looking for the rug pull. So I'm wondering what you think of a few days in, before we get into some of the deployments. Is it real? Do you think this is it? Or do you think there's rugs to come? Or how are you feeling a week into the Golden Age?
I feel tippy top. Like, I think that this is incredible what's happened so far, and I only see a path to winning for the next 4 years. You know, the attitude that you talk about, I've seen it myself in my own chat, you know, especially with the press conference that Trump did with Larry Ellison of Oracle and Sam Altman of OpenAI and the Japanese banker. I couldn't really find anything negative about the Japanese banker, but I mean, there's a lot
either.
There's quite, I mean, you know, probably the worst thing is that his bank, you know, Alibaba or, you know, the Chinese company, they have maybe like a 20% controlling interest in the bank. That's the worst thing that I could find. Really not all that bad, and also not unheard of in terms of like, you know, global financial players. But Larry Ellison, Oracle, I mean, that company was started with InQtel money. Okay. So, I mean, like deep connections to the CIA. He does own a private island, but it's in Hawaii, and there are other people that live there. I mean, he owns like 97% of it.
Did you not get your island yet?
No, I haven't. No, I don't have my yacht either. I know, right?
Jeez.
Yeah. But, you know, but Sam Altman, okay, I mean, I think he's perhaps Satan incarnate. I get really bad feelings from Sam Altman. And he was also just accused of his sister of, you know, having raped her for the last 10 years. Not to mention the OpenAI whistleblower who was clearly murdered in his apartment a month after coming out as a whistleblower against OpenAI. There is so much money in artificial intelligence, and OpenAI is arguably the largest and most profitable of those companies on the face of the planet. But, you know, let's just like, you know, break it down. So the attitude that you speak of, I mean, it occurred a lot during the first 4 years of Trump's term and then the 4 years of Biden. And I think that it goes a lot to the idea that people have this sort of confirmation bias about how things are supposed to work. That if this is real, then this is what it'll look like. Right. And that's not how it works. Okay. I mean, like, this is an operation of massive scale. And so quite often, much as in your personal life or perhaps your professional life, you might have like a path that you want to set for yourself and you want to go in a certain direction. But rarely does your life work out exactly as you intended. However, at the end of the day, quite often it ends up working out exactly as you needed it to work out. And in the moment, that may be difficult to see. But during President Trump's first 4 years, there would be times where people would be like, why would Trump do that? I can't understand it. You know, sometimes he's exposing people. Maybe that's what he's doing with Larry Ellison and Sam Altman. I can tell you this, he just assured the future of AI is going to be in the hands of America. And I can think of no better American government for that to be under the control of than President Trump's new golden age government. So a lot going on there, not only boutique mRNA cancer vaccines. Another thing that people, I guess, I don't know. I find it interesting that nobody thought about this, but like, is anybody aware of how expensive a process it is to have a single-use boutique vaccine made for you as an individual? Using an AI data center, a $500 billion AI data center. I mean, they are not going to be making personalized mRNA cancer vaccines for the plebs, okay? Yeah. This is probably something, if they're successful in what they plan to do, and not any efficacy notwithstanding, if they're able to produce at least one of these and give it to someone, I mean, that's going to be a lot of money. And I'm not certain that person is going to live very long if they take that. So I'm not worried about that personally. Right. I think that there's a larger mission that's at play here, and also multiple layers, as there always is with what President Trump does. But going back to, when Biden took office, and thinking God, maybe this is just what America needs, because it was clear at the end of Trump's term that, even though he may have won, there was still a significant portion of the country that just hated him. The mainstream media had not capitulated yet. So there were things that were said, that just, had not come to pass yet. And there was a statement that was frequently made in the drops that this had to be done by the book.
Yeah, sometimes you have to go through the darkness, right? And it's people, what did people think? And I don't hold myself apart from this. But in hindsight, you've got to be willing to change your mind when new information is presented. And, there's a saying that's the key marker of intelligence. It's not about figuring shit out. It's about taking new information and adjusting your frameworks and your cipher. I call it cognitive ciphers. The reason I have all my cute sayings is because they're things I use as targeting systems to look for patterns. They just work for me. They don't work for everybody, right? But that's one of the major things of when you look at that and you go, what did people think? The darkness was the media being mean to Donald Trump during his first term? There is sort of, you and I have talked about this, I don't know, probably privately and maybe on a couple of shows. But, a lot of people in our audience can probably sympathize with when you go down those rabbit holes. Crimes against children is one that you and I have talked about. That was really the one that re-engaged me into the info war, because I was like a red-pilled liberal when I was 14, 15 about the Bush era. 9/11, JFK,
Did
CIA.
you read Fortunate Son?
No, I did not.
Oh, okay. Well, it's a book about George W. Bush, about his lost years in college and all of this stuff about the Bush family. But it's a great book. You should probably read it. But I'm pretty sure the guy was a liberal who wrote it.
I'm kind of a microcosm of, I think, how close you can be and yet how far away you can be from kind of figuring out. When I say figuring it out, I don't mean we figured it out. We figured out that we didn't fucking know anything. I think that's kind of step one. But when you're a liberal and you're like, oh man, you go into the 9/11 rabbit hole and it was the Bushes, and that lines up with my Boston upbringing of they killed the Kennedys. And it's all of those things are true in my view. But I just didn't get the other side, which is that, all the people opposing them, as Chris always talks about, are the controlled opposition dynamic. And I think that, when you go, my point was that if you go down these dark rabbit holes, I think it can give you perspective on that darkness to light refrain in the drops and go, really sometimes we need to pull back and be honest with ourselves and go, did we really go through the darkness? If you've read about darkness, and to your point, things never go. We all know that we're not read in on these things, but we all know our mileage varies, but we know something is going on that is a plan.
Yep.
And it seems to be a very good plan that's pushing us in a much better direction than we've been in. I do think we're a big part of that plan.
I agree.
But if we accept that, then we have to accept that there is a certain degree of faith, logic-based faith to me, where it makes sense putting people through the darkness. There's an argument in this community all the time about how much are patriots responsible for, and I've engaged in that argument with myself. I go far enough as to say that they allowed the COVID psyop. That's my personal opinion. Whether you think COVID was real or fake or somewhere in between, I personally think patriots allowed those lockdowns to happen.
I agree.
Because it accelerated the awakening.
Yep.
And now people can freak out about that. But talking about AI and models and Sam Altman and whatever the hell, right? If we just logically assume that whatever patriots are in play here, putting together what we can all agree is one of the most complicated plans ever put together to dismantle the most powerful criminal cabal in world history, they probably have some models that told them this is way better of a path than exposing everything on October 31st, 2017 and arresting Hillary Clinton and like purging Haiti of pedophiles, right?
Absolutely. Yeah, if they just did a giant info dump and said, guess what, guys, you've been lied to, here's all of it, everybody would tune out, okay? You'd have a select number of people that would look at it. The rest of the people would go back to TikTok, all right? And they wouldn't experience it, so they wouldn't internalize it, and they wouldn't feel like they had some stake in it. I absolutely agree with you about the COVID psyop. I mean, that experience completely exposed not only the pharmaceutical industrial complex, but also the corruption within our own medical complex within the federal bureaucracy. And I think that those two things are so vitally important to making sure that we truly do set humanity free. Now, if you're looking at the operation right now with Oracle and OpenAI, what if President Trump said, you know what you're going to help me do? You're going to help me prove to the world that mRNA vaccines are deadly and they cause cancer, okay? Because you know that whatever they make, they're going to do a trial. The trials that we already know about, and any animals that were given mRNA vaccines, they all developed turbo cancers and they died. That's why they never came out previously. But that information is already out there. Okay, well, you go ahead and say that to a liberal and they'll be like, oh, that's misinformation. You're just watching Alex Jones or something like that. You know, so now Sam Altman, who, you know, has been kind of a hero to the left. I mean, they love AI. They're like totally embracing it. They think it's awesome. Larry Ellison, you know, he's a Silicon Valley bad boy kind of person. You know, I mean, he's been around for years. These are two of the richest people in the world. You know, Elon Musk, I mean, he is 100% on the Trump train, it would appear. So he doesn't have the same pull that he had in the left-wing circles previously. Yeah. So, you know, somebody has to reveal this. It has to come out some way. And we still have to maintain control of AI going into the immediate future. So, yes, I think that patriots have necessarily been responsible for what's happened. But you have to think about this in terms of like strategy and warfare. Okay. I mean, like, what's better, to allow things to go on the way they have been, where inevitably people will die, people will be enslaved, America will be destroyed, or to do the quick info dump and nobody pays attention and then everybody dies and everybody's enslaved and America gets destroyed, or through some select warfare tactics using game theory to figure out what plan is going to be the best for the ultimate exposure in the quickest time possible. Do you implement that and allow it to happen so that people can wake up naturally and, again, internalize the truth rather than just being parroted the truth by somebody that they don't necessarily trust?
Yeah, I totally agree with that. And, you know, the OpenAI stuff, all that is really interesting. And my personal little cipher term that I use is cognitive sort of constellations. Chris and I use mapping terminology, where it's like, okay, I'll kind of create a framework theory, and I keep that one over here. And I think we all do this, right? Keep this one over here. I agree with everything you laid out about Sam Altman and concerns. I do leave open the possibility that we're seeing one version of the strings cut template being reversed. You know, that was another refrain in the drops. Specifically, I think most people think of like Kim Jong-un in North Korea, strings cut. Now, I just take that a little further and say, okay, you know, somebody recently that's been in the story cycle that I think of is Mark Zuckerberg. You've seen me behind the scenes for a couple years saying like, man, the UFC is starting to you used the word glaze earlier. They're starting to glaze Zuckerberg. And you know, I've always been in the combat sports world, and obviously they're not just adjacent to Trumpism and MAGA. They're like the culture core representation of that in the modern age, long before it was cool to be MAGA. You know, I would estimate that literally over 90% of UFC fighters circa 2015 were were MAGA guys, conspiracy theorist guys. Dana White, flawed human being, but certainly been a loyal guy to Trump. So when I saw them glazing Zuckerberg, I have a couple choices there. I can go like, oh no, the UFC is compromised and everybody's evil and it was all faked all along. I can go another way and say, maybe Zuckerberg wasn't who I thought. Maybe he's good all along. Or where I kind of map it is, okay, if it's true, what most in the truth community believe about Mark Zuckerberg, that essentially The Social Network by David Fincher is a work of fiction, meant to create a character of this new Silicon Valley era tech billionaire genius, Mark Zuckerberg, whiz kid, but that people in the truth community think he's kind of handled by, whether you think the CCP, the deep state, right? DARPA, LifeLog, I'm sure you've talked about that stuff a million times. If we hold that that's possible, then it means he's a figurehead, right? He's just a front man. Well, you know what you can do with a front man is you can just take that front man and you can just put him over here once you're in control of these systems. And like you kind of alluded to that with somebody like Altman. I go there and I go, okay, maybe they're being used to expose some of the dangers of this stuff. Alternatively, I think part of what they're being used to expose is Trump just saying, seeding the narrative with, hey guys, we're not just ambitious on a trade level and everything. We're going to cure cancer. And it reminds me of when he was calling the news fake, where at the time, so many normies were like, man, it's ridiculous that he's even saying that. And 8 years later, even normies are like, yeah, I mean, I don't know if it's fake. I just don't watch it anymore at all because I don't trust them. So him seeding, like, we're just going to develop something and we're going to cure cancer for you. No problem. Like, we're going to cure the best cancer you've ever seen. And most normies are like, well, that's completely absurd to even have that conversation. Whether it happens through AI or Sam Altman or some other agenda, I bet that those cures exist.
Yeah.
And patriots know what they are. So are we watching some translations of those cures to Normieville in a way they can engage with that makes sense to them?
Yeah, so imagine President Trump steps forward and says, guess what, guys? We've had the cure for cancer for the last 70 years. So every single person that you've ever loved who is dead as a result of that cure being withheld, well, sorry about that, but we're going to make good on it from here on out. Yeah, we could have stopped it. People would be enraged. Okay, I think the people who already know about it are already enraged.
Yeah.
But imagine this OpenAI Oracle Japan vehicle as a means to release those things to the public. And, they can just say that we got it. However, either through AI or through the research that was being done at this brand new facility that Donald Trump had $500 billion invested here in the United States. He's a hero. Okay. He brings jobs back to America. He brings significant investment back to America, brings now a cure for cancer and whatever else God wants him to put out there. He's going to be able to do it. And of course, again, it'll be far more believable than somebody just getting on stage and saying, hey, guess what? And saying that it's happening. Now, to your point about strings cut, I think that's exactly what's going on. The CIA is, in my opinion, the sort of, it's like the domestic bureaucratic overseer of the deep state for the United States. Okay,
they're the talent agency.
yes, they're the talent agency.
The CAA, right, which may be CIA Correct. As well.
Yes, and through their various means, they have infiltrated Hollywood. They've infiltrated businesses all around, be it tech companies or banking or construction, real estate, whatever it might be. They've infiltrated every single federal agency in the United States government. They've probably got people at state and local levels as well, so that they can just make sure that everything continues on as they've been willing it to all these years. I think they pretty much took over the country a long time ago. And, they may be doing their thing here, but then there's this like globalist element to it as well. And there are proxies for the CIA in all of these other countries, whether it's them operating in a country like, say, Nicaragua or, Colombia, something like that. Yeah. You also have, agencies like the Mossad. I mean, they're doing their thing in Israel, and then they're also doing their thing in other places around the world. But at the end of the day, they're all working for the same globalist ends. So the CIA, they control people like Mark Zuckerberg, perhaps people like Larry Ellison, considering that, as I mentioned, In-Q-Tel, I mean, they have provided seed money. The In-Q-Tel is like the venture capital arm of the CIA. So they have started all of these various businesses. The same with LifeLog, which became Facebook. So Mark Zuckerberg, President Trump comes in, these people get their strings cut, and then I'm very pragmatic about it. I mean, Mark Zuckerberg knows people hate him. He knows that what he's done for the deep state and for the former regime was wrong. Okay, so then he's got a ton of money. He wants to advertise with what is it, the Dana White's place,
UFC,
the UFC.
Right.
Yes, he wants to advertise with the UFC. He says, "I want to rehabilitate my image." Okay, so then he hires somebody to throw a baggy T-shirt on him and a pair of jeans and this gold necklace, and then he starts doing Krav Maga.
He's even doing doing jujitsu and
okay, So I mean, these people are working together, and of course, maybe they are not inherently evil, but I mean, you've got that much money behind you and you're controlled by a non-benevolent agency that could kill you at any point. There's a lot of people out there who are just going to do what they're told because they don't want to get assassinated. Okay. And now they've been given the opportunity to come to the light side. Some of them likely are going to have to face justice for what they've done. Maybe they'll do that privately. But those people within the federal bureaucracy that are just inherently evil and have been openly going against Donald Trump all this time, I would imagine somebody like a Nancy Pelosi or an Adam Schiff or, any of these bureaucrats who like Jake Sullivan, the holdovers at the NSC that were getting ready to sabotage Trump 2.0. Those people, I want to see them at Gitmo. And I think that a lot of these people are simply trying to rehabilitate their image and perhaps put forward a good face, do the right thing. Does it mean that inside in their hearts, they're suddenly good people? Not necessarily. They may have been struggling throughout the years doing what they were told to do, but I think that their weakness shows what kind of character they really have. So people have the ability to change. Given certain circumstances, people will behave in despicable ways. And given the opportunity to redeem themselves, they will also do that. But I will never tell anybody to glaze Mark Zuckerberg. I think that Donald Trump is using him, and I think that Mark Zuckerberg likely is happy to be used.
Yeah, man, I totally agree with that. And I'd add to when you're saying, Zuckerberg it's like a rebranding, a rehabilitation tour. It makes sense from his side of things. But as you just said, I was thinking of it the opposite way when it came to the UFC. I was like, the UFC is glazing Mark Zuckerberg, and they don't really give a shit. In fact, I know for a fact Dana White did not have a good relationship with Mark Zuckerberg or with Facebook Meta in that era. So when I saw them start to glaze him, I was looking at it more as patriots are glazing him to the MAGA audience because they now have control of him. I'm not saying Dana White knows this or the UFC, but I think, maybe Trump gives Dana a call and says, "Hey Dana, like get Mark in there. I'm working with him on some things. Like he's coming around. Like put him on camera, get him warmed up." And it's the branding goes both ways. Another guy, I mentioned Kim Jong-un earlier. Ghost and I have talked about this quite a bit. It's one of his favorite theaters in the InfoWar. I always talk about the Sovereign Alliance and perceived alliances between Trump and these other figures. I think Putin gave us a pretty great calm to that.
So amazing.
And I think I think most people in the Anon world don't even grasp what he's saying there, the true implications of what he's saying. So we mentioned COVID, and you and I are on the same page about patriots on some level allowing it to play out. Doesn't mean they did it, but allowing it to play out. Most people in our community rightly saw Putin's comments as saying like, hey, there's some coordination or at least good relations between Putin and Trump. Like, sure, okay, fine, take that. He's saying the Ukraine conflict wouldn't have happened if Trump was in office. Trump's saying the Ukraine conflict wouldn't have happened with Trump in office. Now, I think that is true and a devolution proof. I've long said that, you have to take that one step further. Do you think the denazification effort in the Donbass was necessary? I think it was necessary. I think Putin is telling the truth. Therefore, you have to then apply that to what Putin and Trump are saying. And I think this is how disclosure works, right? Like the Q drops say the choice to know will be yours. You mentioned this with COVID. They're telling you, listen, this would never have happened if I was in office. Putin's telling you this would never have happened if Trump was in office. Putin's also telling you this had to happen. So it's another reason that Trump was not in office, in my view, is that if he was in office, he would have been forced by sort of the narrative to confront Putin for what he was doing, according to Normieville, including tons of Republicans still think Putin's like a evil bad guy, right? And that Russians are evil. They don't get what's going on here. Maybe some of them are starting to wake up. So I think there's more disclosure in some of this stuff than even people are getting. It's like they're telling you, yeah, this never would have happened. I think he's telling you this. I don't pretend to know what the answer is or what the long term of this shit is. But when Trump's telling you, yeah, the Israel stuff never would have happened if I was in there, I think he can be telling you the truth and telling you we needed to withdraw from Kabul. We needed the COVID wake up to happen. We needed Putin to go into the Donbass. So he's not lying while he's also allowing you to take that further step and go, man, maybe this is why Trump is using the word this week, I skipped my second term. Like, yeah, because it's not just about the U.S. to me. It's about the world too.
No, absolutely. I mean, as goes the U.S., so goes the world. And as the last 4 years elapsed, the deep state essentially weakened itself through the decisions that they made, the speed that they needed to move to try to implement what they had lost during Trump's first 4 years and the reforms that he had made to push America in the right direction. And so, they by doing so, they necessarily weakened their position and their sort of level of respect in the eyes of regular Americans. And so by the end of Biden's 4 years, the entire nation is essentially crying out for Trump to return so that we can have some semblance of normalcy and undo everything that's been done. And, of course, Ukraine had to be denazified. I mean, that was a CIA operation right there. As soon as World War II ended, we were immediately inside there, setting up the forefathers of the Azov battalion so that we could have like a counterbalance to the communists. Okay. We didn't care that they were Nazis. We just wanted to help them out and give them money and set them up. And by the way, at some point, we're also going to be building weapons laboratories because we can't do it here in the United States. And you guys are just going to have to deal with it. And all of these things had to happen. I mean, whether it's for the information reveal or whether it's for the actual, presented reason that it had to be done. I mean, the situation in Ukraine had degraded to the point that it did because the United States oversaw a coup of a democratically elected government in 2014. Okay. Like that was us. All right. And because of that, the eastern portions of Ukraine, the semi-autonomous regions broke off and they said, we don't want anything to do with this new Western aligned government. The former government had been making overtures to Russia and they were going to have a much better relation with Russia. As soon as the United States installed their puppets, everything went to shit. I mean, it's been crazy there ever since. And the Western government of Ukraine was bombing the eastern semi-autonomous regions. I mean, war crimes. I mean, just like indiscriminate bombing, women and children dead from missile attacks. I mean, just all kinds of horrible things. And so Russia was engaging in a humanitarian mission. All right. I mean, they had to get rid of the Azov because they were also indiscriminately killing people because they saw them as traitors. I mean, that was the prescribed vision that they had for them. Think like North and South during the Civil War. Yeah. You've got Yankees going into Georgia to take out Confederate brigades because they don't want to be part of our country anymore. And if you don't want to be part of your country, we're going to kill you to make sure that you remain part of our country. And
absolutely.
Yes. And so that's what they did. And so Russia, these people are ethnically Russian, essentially. They don't want to take over the region necessarily, but they're more than happy to provide a security arrangement, just as we do with many countries that are involved in NATO. All of them where there is still like a heavy U.S. military presence, and largely because there was supposed to be this counterbalance to communism. That doesn't exist anymore. in this new golden age, Donald Trump and Vladimir Putin can come to an agreement. We can have peace. We can make sure that Russia prospers, that the United States prosper. And all we got to do is get rid of these globalist leaders in the central Russia. And that's also been taking care of itself as well. We've had this uprising of populist leaders coming in all during the last 4 years, largely because they started their sort of demoralization operation much earlier than what was seen here in the United States. You know, I mean, like for years, we've been saying that, you know, the unrestrained illegal migration going into Europe was a prelude to what they were going to do here in the United States. They were definitely working on allowing more people to come in. But then as soon as Biden comes in, it's like all of a sudden we're Malmo, Sweden. And we've just got just like an influx of people, too many to be able to watch, to be able to catalog, to be able to take care of. And that forced a lot of people to realize that we cannot have this. It had to be that way so that they would accept Donald Trump coming back. Go back. One more thing. Go back to the final days in office. And it was bad, but it was bad because of what the deep state had done to try to hamstring Donald Trump so that he couldn't be as successful as he was going to be. There were people who blamed Donald Trump for that stupidly because they weren't paying attention. Yes, because they were listening to Con Inc., because they were listening to the mainstream media. And now, only after 4 years of Joe Biden and a number of key truths being revealed, have they come to the realization that, gosh, they were wrong. It wasn't Donald Trump. It was the people that we thought were going to save us. You know, bingo, bango, bongo, the same thing that many other Americans had come to many years before.
Well said. You know, I talk about Russia all the time. It's kind of what I was a long time lurker in the info war, but that's what, for some reason, that confluence of narratives in late 2021, early 2022 really brought me into the info war, created the Burning Bright thing, and I started with the Righteous Russia series. And you know, part of that is when you mentioned 2014. I've said before on the show, but I was a lifelong martial artist. I trained with Russians in Boston when I was a young man, and that kind of Russia pilled me a little bit. I'm not going to say, you know, I became this Russia stan when I was 18, but it totally, I dealt with a lot of cognitive dissonance training with Russians in Boston as a liberal. I wasn't like a Russia fearing guy, but I just kind of accepted the central narrative. Like, yeah, Putin's a dictator. I mean, remember, he has been in power for a long time. The 90s is when Putin came up. And I remember
take a break though. He handed all the reins off to Medvedev.
Yeah, exactly. Like Trump giving it to JD Vance for 4 years and then coming back again. Exactly. I mean, but those were the kind of moves that now we would cheer that for Donald Trump. And I think a lot of MAGA still has not, and maybe they will never do, it brings a tear to my eye. But a lot of MAGA, I think, is missing one of the beautiful stories of the modern age. And I think that is the Russian story. Yeah. What I mean by that is their own golden age. I think you mentioned the demoralization. They were further ahead. I wrote about that in Righteous Russia, actually. And I think it was in part 1 or part 2, it was all about the history of Russia, the 3 stories of Russia, past, present, and future. And speaking about going through the darkness, like the Bolsheviks, the deep state invaded Russia. So you will get all this like 60s era anti-Russian propaganda. It's all anti-Soviet propaganda. They were subjugating the Russians, right? Mm-hmm. It's like, and people don't think of that thing. Yeah. But when you take that a few steps further, man, I remember training with those guys, and one of them was such a Putin guy, and he was a Spetsnaz soldier. So funny, he was the massage therapist for the Boston Celtics, but his main job was he ran a Russian Sambo school in North Boston. So I trained with this guy, and I asked him one day, once I had kind of earned his trust, because when you fight Russians, you'll earn their trust pretty quickly. And I'm like, what's the deal? You've got 2 portraits in the gym. One of them is Fedor Emelianenko, an MMA Russian heavyweight legend. Makes sense. The other one is Vladimir Putin. And I'm like, what's the deal, man? So he's showing me a photo album of it. It stuck in my head, and the pieces didn't come together until a decade later in the info war for me. He shows me a photo album of him and his unit, the Spetsnaz, in the Caucasus. Like they were in Kazakhstan, Syria, and they were fighting Al-Qaeda.
Mm-hmm.
And he goes, do you know who those guys are? I'm like, oh, they're terrorists, right? War on terror era. And he says, no, whenever you say the word terrorist, you should replace it, Americans, with CIA.
Yes.
He said those are all CIA. And, they were Al-Qaeda, but he said, you funded them.
Yep.
The Obama was the president at this time. He said, your president is funding all of the people that I was fighting in the 90s. Mm-hmm. And I didn't accept that as truth, but it stuck in there where I'm like, man, this guy absolutely believes this. Like, in all these Russians, I had that, like, are we the baddies moment that then was actualized in a much clearer way. But my whole point there is to say that even some people in our audience, some people in MAGA, I don't think they go far enough. They say, oh, we can still work with Putin. I see this all the time from people that were like grifting off what a lot of us were talking about years ago and then got these huge Twitter accounts. And they're like, oh, maybe Trump can make peace with Vladimir Putin. And my whole supposition or argument is you need to reverse engineer this a little more. If you're a Russian, you think Donald Trump is the new guy to the Sovereign Alliance. Mm-hmm. Like Putin dismantled the Russian oligarchy in 1997.
Yep.
Went into Chechnya, liberated the Dagestani Muslims from Al-Qaeda and ISIS, liberated the Syrians, or tried to, he's basically, you could make the argument that Vladimir Putin was the one who declared war on the deep state. And I think Trump's been in the shadows for a long time. I do believe in those theories. But man, like a lot of Americans in MAGA still have that mentality of like, yep, Donald Trump and the Great Awakening, and like, yeah, we'll allow Putin to deal with us, and we'll allow these other guys to deal with us. Like, you guys need to look at some of the history of these figures and who they were dealing with and how long they were dealing with it. Like you said in the Donbass, look at what Trump's saying this week, where he's talking about more people have died there than any of you in the media are talking about. My personal opinion is he's talking about what you said. He's talking about going back like to 2014 and beyond. More people have been killed there than any of you know, and most of them were Russians.
Yep, absolutely. Yeah, I think you're totally right. I mean, obviously, Putin has been political for a lot longer than Trump. Russia has largely thrived under Putin, and they've also been in a sort of, locked in war with the rest of the globalists for the entire time. Russia has done a lot to make sure that their nation is taken care of. It's not perfect, right? You've still got the little villages outside of cities that, people are drinking too much or they're living off of pensions. And, a lot of that is still a carryover from when communism was in place. Because, people might not have had much under communism, but the government took care of everything. That sort of mentality is devastating for a people. And, in order to break them out of that, you have to be in a much larger sense. You've got to be doing a much bigger operation. And, at the same time that he's doing that, he's also got to worry about all of the attacks coming in from externally. And if you can have a sort of ally like the United States of America operating towards the same goal, looking to destroy that New World Order contingent, then there you go. I think it's going to be a lot easier.
Yeah, and John, credit to John, much as I hate to give him credit, he's very good at finding random documents that nobody else found. And man, was it a great puzzle piece to fit in that at least maps onto the idea of these friendships and alliances going back a long way. The article, I forget which magazine it was in, could have been Time, Donald Trump, 1987, talking about that the key to world peace is getting a friendly president with the friendly Russian president.
Yep.
I was talking about a few months ago, all the analogs with Absolute, because, Abs is a big JFK guy. Me and him are big JFK guys, and thinking, man, it's interesting that we're seeing like Cuban Missile Crisis reruns replete with Russian back channels between Donald Trump and Vladimir Putin. And, my opinion is that these back channels have long been established and that we're watching intentional reruns. But yeah, it's very encouraging. And, like you said, Russia has come such a long way. And one of the really interesting things for me that's part of what's led me into a bit of a journey of faith myself. I've talked with Chris a lot. Me and him had very similar views on religion when we were young, and a lot of people who become liberals feel that way, and they don't trust centralized religion, maybe for good reasons, but then that keeps them away from a lot of really great aspects about Christianity, etc. And whatever you think about Christianity, I'm not trying to convince anybody. I'm certainly not a Christian scholar, but when you see the transition from Soviet-era Russia, you map the Vladimir Putin rise, take politics out of it. When you look at the numbers of percentage of Russia in like 1993 that identified as Orthodox Christian versus right now, he basically tripled the percentage of people in Russia who identify as Orthodox Christians by living as an Orthodox Christian.
Yes.
And he's called it a Christian revival and talked about, going back to Tsar Nicholas and going back to the Western media portrays him as talking about empire. He's talking about an era that we aren't even taught about in the West of basically an Orthodox Christian superstate, an empire, several hundred years ago. And when you allow yourself to think about that and think about what happens if you have an American revival in concert with a Russian revival, with a Chinese revival, I mean, that's some powerful stuff, whatever you think of the underlying religion.
Yeah, you're absolutely correct. I mean, Kennedy was in the process of normalizing relations with Russia. The CIA attempted to set off World War III with the Bay of Pigs. Kennedy did not support the CIA's mission and wouldn't allow them to deploy American troops and basically, create this World War III. And they thought that he was too soft on Russia, and it wasn't that they were necessarily anti-communist. Okay, they were anti-Soviet because it was the power that they represented on the global stage. And of course, there always has to be this boogeyman nationally, so that we have something to instill fear into people for. And of course, the CIA, as many other federal agencies do, they have to justify their own existence. So, espionage and counter intel, I mean, all of that stuff has to be justified if they're going to continue to get appropriations. And Kennedy was a threat to all of that. Now we are in a very similar time. During the time of communist Russia, the church existed, but it was controlled by the Communist Party. I mean, all of the priests, I mean, they'd have to inform on their congregation if people came in and told them things. And so people just turned away. I mean, communism is inherently an ideology that does not place faith in anything other than the state. And so people moved away from it. They stopped believing in God and they started believing in the party. And it's a completely different world under Vladimir Putin. You're absolutely right. He does not get enough credit for that. And I think that it is it's a wonderful thing. It's a wonderful thing to think that could happen here too.
Yeah, and I'll transition to American Golden Age stuff, but I think a lot of our discussion about the Golden Age is this optimism and almost this surreal optimism as we led the show with. And the reason I talk about Russia so much is because, I find it fascinating, but really it's because I truly don't think a lot of people are prepared for how amazing things are going to be. And when you think about Russia, etc., that's part of it. Truly a mesh of peace. One of the things I'd said in Righteous Russia was we're entering a world where we may have leaders that aren't just going to sue for peace, but mandate it. They're going to have the power to mandate it. And I want to lead into, I want to set you up for this. I want your thoughts on just how Trump is handling and what he's deploying, what he's doing for the week one of the Golden Age. You kind of led with it a little bit. I wrote down a quote that was from Michael Saylor recently that I thought applied to what you were saying earlier about the optimism. He said, with regards to Bitcoin, he said, you never win in the way you thought you were going to win. Saylor said this to the Rug Pull Radio guys on Badlands Media because, it's like G-Money, and I love him, but he's like, stop paying taxes to pedophiles and domestication. And Sailor, very good-naturedly, basically said, "You're right, but you never win in the way you thought you were going to win."
Right.
Which, man, does that make people think Sailor is involved with Patriot plans and now he's going to Mar-a-Lago, etc. But I thought that that was a great analog to the Golden Age. And before I pass it to you, I've mentioned this clip on many different shows, and this is kind of Trump week 1 made me think of this, and then I want your thoughts on it. So this is the infamous "Power is power" refrain from Game of Thrones.
The Mockingbird. You created your own sigil, didn't you?
Yes.
Appropriate for a self-made man with so many songs to sing.
I'm glad you like it. Some people are fortunate enough to be born into the right family. Others have to find their own way.
I heard a song once about a boy of modest means. Found his way into the home of a very prominent family. He loved the eldest daughter. Sadly, she had eyes for another.
When boys and girls live in the same home, awkward situations can arise. Sometimes I've heard even brothers and sisters develop certain affections. And when those affections become common knowledge, well, that is an awkward situation. Indeed, especially in a prominent family. Prominent families often forget a simple truth. I've found.
And which truth is that?
Knowledge is power.
Seize him. Cut his throat. Stop. Wait. I've changed my mind. Let him go. Step back 3 paces. Turn around. Close your eyes. Power is power. Do see if you can take some time away from your coins and your whores to locate the star god.
You're muted.
So I've mentioned that scene many times. I wanted to play it for people. Far be it from me to compare Donald Trump to Cersei Lannister. That's not meant to be. That's not meant to be. You know, the character-wise. But I love that scene from a writing perspective because Littlefinger is right. Knowledge is power. It is a form of power. Information is a form of power. We know that in the info war, right? Mm-hmm. But power is also power. And that clip was just hitting my brain all week with Trump deployments. You said something similar to me before the show. So just take it away of how Trump's treating this first week.
Well, first of all, I love that scene because it's like a series of escalations until you know that you've reached the top of the pyramid. Cersei makes it very clear that she's really the one holding the upper hand. She starts out by essentially calling him a mimic. Okay, that's what mockingbirds are. They're just imitating other things. And that's exactly what Littlefinger's done. He has imitated someone of noble birth, and he's found himself amongst these people who truly do have that noble blood. And he tries to do a power play on her, and she very quickly puts him right in his place. And that's exactly what Donald Trump has done on a number of occasions since he was the president-elect. Okay, we've seen it with Canada. We've seen it with Mexico. We've seen it with Greenland and Denmark. And we just saw it with Colombia earlier today. You know, I think that these world leaders, they see President Trump. First of all, they thought he was dead, that his political career was over. And during his first 4 years in office, they were the ones who were holding the upper hand, or perhaps they were allowed to believe that they held the upper hand because there was a lot that Donald Trump wanted to do, but the deep state was entrenched and they had a lot of power, despite the fact that he was the president of the United States. But now, as soon as he's come in, there have been a series of decisions and proclamations that he's been able to make, which have essentially set the tenor of how this is going to go. And those planes of illegals that were full of Colombians was turned away by the Colombian government. Donald Trump immediately went on Truth Social. Okay, this is like a very public humiliation ritual for these people. What goes on Truth Social, and he announces this series of actions, which in 24 hours will devastate Colombia. And the Colombian president is Littlefinger in that moment. Okay, this is the knife at his throat. And he immediately falls to his knees and begs Donald Trump not to do these things, and then even offers up his own private plane. And on top of that, in the midst of all of it, he got exposed once more in a far more public way for being caught with a tranny a couple of months ago over the summer. His wife kind of looks like a man, so I don't know exactly what's going on there, what his preferences are. But a lot of people were just like, laughing at him, essentially. I mean, like, he's been exposed in a number of ways. I really don't care what he does in his personal time. But the point is that if he's going to be making decisions or attempting to flex his muscles to the United States of America, then we are going to show him, just as we've shown all of these other people, that it's really us that hold the power. And if you want to F around, then you're going to find out. Donald Trump also posted that meme of himself with a sign that said FAFO.
Here it is. Yeah, I hadn't seen this until Zach mentioned it before the show. Yeah, I mean, you guys have seen the FAFO going around all week, and man, Trump posting it himself. Also, shout out, I was talking to Mrs. Wright about this. I've certainly seen this in the zeitgeist, and I don't think it's silly. I do think it's signal. Melania looks like an absolute G this week. Like, just the presence. It has this air, like, especially the outfit she was wearing at first. And I saw people posting pictures of Princess Diana and stuff. I mean, maybe, I don't know what she was trying to do. I just know that the image was basically fuck around and find out, coming out of her before Trump's posting memes, etc. She's shadowing her husband, looking like the Undertaker or V from V for Vendetta. It really has this, especially when you contrast that with the Tiffany blue dress on the first inauguration that a lot of us took as signal, hearkening back to the Kennedys. But that was like, to Normieville, that's like a bright image. Oh, the first lady, she's wearing a dress, whether you liked her or hated her. She wasn't trying. I mean, you're gonna tell me she's wearing like an Undertaker costume and a top hat, basically, and a wide brimmed hat that you can't even see her eyes because they're drenched in shadow. And
she doesn't crack V for Vendetta too.
Yeah, she doesn't crack a smile the whole day. Like, that was signal. These things are signal. Sometimes they're just pretty on the nose. To your point about F around and find out, I loved this one about the Federal Reserve, when you talk about power is power.
The interest rates will come down.
You said that you would demand that the interest rates come down.
Well,
do you expect
I would put in a strong statement.
Do you expect the Fed to listen to
you?
Yeah, I mean, that to normies, it goes mimetic, right? It goes viral on YouTube because it's, look at the alpha Chad. And I think that's intentional. But I think we see that and go, you read a little bit of Joe Lang. You read a little bit about how Trump folded the Treasury folded the Fed into the Treasury way back in 2019, 2020. It just, nobody talks about it anymore, even though Bloomberg was freaking out about it at the time. Like, are we going to pretend that there's a negotiation that's going to happen between Donald Trump and the Federal Reserve? Or are we going to admit that they are going to do whatever the fuck that guy tells them to do because he is the Cersei in this situation?
Well, and I mean, if you think about it, I mean, clearly Jerome Powell is Littlefinger as well, because, I mean, he was asked, will you step down? And he basically said no. And he said that the president has no authority to do that. Well, maybe previously Jerome, but I mean, like, it's a brand new world. This is completely different. Of course they're going to listen to him. They're going to be forced to listen to him because this is the chain of command. And President Trump now sits in the proper throne that he was always meant to sit in.
Absolutely. One thing, and I don't mean to shit on them all the time. It's good fun, but I'm also partly serious when I talk about my Canadian in-laws, etc. But I've talked about my time living in Canada. I did successfully rewild one, as Zach knows. She's drenched in freedom now. But the Canadians, I know it's not all of them, but there's among some of them, there's this Europeans as well. There's like this decorum expectation that I noticed that people who can't beat people like us in argument, most people in this community have experienced this. You're talking to a normie, they can't beat you in a logical argument. So what do? They start talking about Donald Trump's character.
Right.
And how he acts. I just wish he was nicer. And, you know, I used to kind of give them that and be like, yeah, but I don't do that anymore. Now in the FAFO term, I think that from Justin Trudeau to Claudia Sheinbaum to Gavin Newsom to pick your person. You mentioned Jerome Powell, the little fingers. It's not a good time in the collective mind to be a little finger right now. It's not a good time, if you're a Canadian, even if you're a normie American, this is not the time to lecture Americans about the behavior of their president for being confrontational. When your economy is in free fall, even compared to the United States under Joe Biden, you don't have freedom of speech. You're taken over by Syrian migrants. I literally know for a fact, it's an anecdote, but my brother-in-law, him and his wife make six figures. They each make six figures. They can't buy a house.
Wow.
They cannot buy a house in Canada right now because they're being told their budget needs to be $1.5, $1.6 million to get into something like in a decent area, no yard, nothing like that, like a starter home, because of how Trudeau has sold them out. But then Trudeau will get up in front of that country and cry about supposed atrocities that were committed against LGBTQ plus IA Native Canadian Indians in 1862. And they're going to, it's not InfoWar stuff, but I think that the Overton window has shifted to the point where a lot of Americans in particular, and even some foreigners, are starting to look at Donald Trump and be like, man, it is so goddamn refreshing that this dude goes into the fire-ravaged LA County and tells the mayor to her face she fucked everything up.
Yes.
And I saw, I'll pass it to you, but I saw a tweet earlier, like a meme that I thought was hilarious, went pretty viral, and it was from a European. It said, if I've learned anything after my time living in the United States, like in the last 10 years, it's that not a single American cares at all what a European thinks of them.
No.
And I think that's only accelerating, and it's going to create this bifurcation between the American golden age, and unfortunately, I think for Canadians and Europeans, I don't think they're done with their awakening. Not that we are, but you said with Russia, like Russia was further ahead than we were in terms of demoralization and thus awakening. I think Canada and the UK and Europe, I think that they're still a bit behind. They need a bit more education.
I think that they are coming to the realization about, a number of select subjects. But again, I'm not there, so I can't see it.
Yeah.
You take a look
That's
at
fair.
video coming out of France or Germany or like Sweden, Norway, Denmark. I mean, like it's quite obvious that mass immigration has destroyed those places. Okay. The UK, the same thing has happened with people being vaccinated, right? I mean, like that's done massive damage. Socialized medicine has also destroyed those countries. You can take a look at a street in the United Kingdom, like Bristol or something like that. Okay, a place that used to have business and industry, maybe at one time was a draw for people traveling. Now it's like safer to go to like, I don't know, Kensington in Philadelphia, right? I mean, like the places have just become shitholes. I mean, for lack of a better term. And so people definitely, they understand that needs to change. And so that's why you've got this like uprising of right-wing populists, but the left-wing globalists still have a lot of power. And that's why you've seen, them essentially just like refusing to cede power. How many times has Macron kept this government going when he should have been gone long ago? I mean, these people, I think for a long time, they've seen America as sort of the redheaded bastard stepchild of Europe.
Right.
Okay. And, we started this country because we were sick and tired of being told what to do. And we kicked the Brits out because we didn't want them to control us from afar and unjustifiably tax us. And that has just never sat well with them. I mean, these cultures in Europe, they're coming from a very elitist point of view, where you've got like a pretty stark delineation between castes of society.
Right.
Okay. And, certain types of people, based upon how you're raised, what family you come from, you're going to behave in a certain way. And here in America, it's the land of opportunity. It's not perfect right now, but you do have the ability to come to America and to thrive and to make yourself into something that you weren't when you were born. And that's always been something that I think that they detest. And they would love it if they could control us, and they can, denigrate us because we are perhaps a little uncouth in comparison to them. But right. I would take freedom and liberty and lack of moral and decorum any day of the week. I have absolutely no care for what the British House of Lords has to say about Elon Musk or Donald Trump or the Patriots. Like, this is our country. These European nations have been living off of the backs of the American taxpayer for a very long time. They've taxed their own people to death. They have destroyed their own business and industry. They have these protectionist schemes all locked up inside the European Union. And then they denigrate us when Donald Trump talks about implementing similar things here in the United States. They have no leg to stand on. There is no moral high ground there. And so I really don't care. I don't think anybody else cares. And I want America to thrive. And if America can thrive, and then the other countries of the world can take a page from our book and then thrive in a similar sense, I think that will be far better for humanity than continuing on with this pseudo royal type lifestyle that they've been living all these years.
Yeah, well said. And, I want to be clear too, because I see some people in the chat say this every time. And to be clear, I totally understand there is a global populist uprising. It is a very real thing. The awakening will spread worldwide. I mean, we've got the Alternative for Germany party. In fact, the Germans might be the most based Europeans. And, the central narrative, or the progenitors of the central narrative, man, they've got that handy, speaking of narratives, they've got that handy narrative cudgel of the Nazis to just slap down anything that even starts to look like German populism, right?
Yep.
It's a very handy. Now, I'm not talking about conspiracies with Hitler and all that. I'm not one of the Hitler was actually secretly a good guy dudes. I think that's a psyop. But I do believe that it is used as this cudgel to sort of put psychological chains, self-censorship chains on a European people who otherwise maybe display a lot of natural similarities to Americans in terms of temperament, etc., like you said. But the thing I will say about the Canadians and about some Europeans, not all, but more than Americans, is it's in keeping with what you said about just the mentality of Americans and freedom and everything. I remember I watched a podcast. I forget who this was. Some like, bro podcast on YouTube months ago, just happened to be playing. And they were two Brits talking to each other about the differences between the US and Britain. And both of them had immigrated to the US and fell in love with it. And one of them, the host of it, was talking about how he used to think the cowboy thing was very silly. And then he moved to Texas, and now he liked it at first because it was fun and cartoonish. But now that he's been there a few years, he gets it to the point where he's like, this is a sacred symbol. And the guest said something really interesting, because the host said, why do you think British men apologize for their behavior so much? That's the way he framed it. He was like, the guest said, what's the biggest difference that you've noticed living in America? And the host said, Americans don't apologize for being American, which is exactly in keeping with the rant you just went on, right? That just comes out of us. If you push an American far enough, they'll be like, why don't you go fuck yourself? We kicked all of you out 200 years ago. We'll do it again. Like, and you know, it's baked into us. He said, Americans don't care what you think of them, and they don't apologize for being American, right? Which the psyops, DEI, and the woke thing, all of that, as you used the word earlier in the show, it's demoralization. They want us to apologize for that. You know who else doesn't apologize for being what they are is Russians. Do not apologize for being Russian. They
Even
are very
more
similar. Yeah, you're right.
Yeah.
But what really struck me about that podcast is what the guest then responded with. The host said, Americans don't apologize. Why do you think that is? Why do you think Brits are not like this? And the guest said, if you just apply some bloodline logic to this, there's not something inherent, like magical, I don't think, that hits you when you become an American. But he said, think of the Europeans that went to America. Like genetically, think of the mentality of the Europeans that went there. They were Germans, Irish, English, Russians, you know, whoever they were. The people that went there when it was not easy to go there, went there, first of all, it wasn't easy. It was very difficult to make it there. Second of all, everything you said, they went there for the promise of freedom, to get away from subjugation. And that takes a certain mentality, a certain disagreeableness to that personality. And I guess it's so obvious once he said it, but it really made me start thinking of, we literally are dealing with bloodlines in the United States of disagreeable human beings. If you grow up in Boston, you know that there is a difference between somebody who is a Boston Irish person and a different American. Like, they are different things.
Yep.
And I think it makes sense that maybe a lot of the people who were left behind in Europe, not to mention all the ones who were killed, Chris Paul says, you know, they take out the strong men in the world wars, the Europeans. This might be part of why it's taken so long for them to kind of stand up in the way that Americans have, because there just aren't as many strong-minded ones over there, and we're creating a new generation of them maybe.
Absolutely. The strongest, the bravest, the most resilient, the most desperate, okay? They came to a foreign land having absolutely no guarantees that they were going to be successful, just armed with the knowledge that it was possible here and that they could live a better life, they could make something of themselves, and they could be successful, and they could be happier. Yes, the mentality of those people have led to the population that we have here in America today. And, you know, the same can be said for like the third world peoples that they've tried to import here with, you know, differing outlooks on the world and certainly a different sort of perspective on what they want. The people that are coming here today have been coming largely, the illegals, I should say, have been coming largely because they want a handout, because they want to take advantage, and because they also want to take over, but they want to subjugate the people who have been too weak to deny them and who look at them naively as if this is somehow virtuous, that we're just going to allow another set of peoples to come into our country and just take it over. You know, I mean, like, there's a reason the Vikings were badass and they came to America before anybody else. Maybe the Phoenicians, but, you know, that's arguable. But you know, but there's also an argument to be made that the Phoenicians and the Vikings were the same people. That's another show. But they came here first, and the Vikings were feared all across Europe. I mean, to the east and the west. They would go on raiding parties and they would kill everyone. They would rape women and then they would leave. Okay. And then if those women lived, then they would have Viking babies. And then hopefully those would grow up to be stronger and create greater stock in the areas that they had destroyed.
Which we're not advocating, by the way.
Not advocating at all. But I mean, this is
it's just the way it is.
Way of the world. It happens in the animal kingdom all the time. You know, I mean, there is a fight for dominance among the males of the species. And the strongest ones, the ones that have the most tenacity, the ones that are going to be willing to put up with a little bit of heartache, they're the ones that are going to be the ones that are most successful.
Yeah. And you know, I think that cuts to the heart of the matter. I mean, I'm big into animals, obviously chose a tiger as my avatar. Like you mentioned with lions, with alphas, whatever. I think we live in an era, the deep state has tried to invert everything. Inversion and subversion are their tools of the trade, right? And I think my main takeaway from just seeing how Donald Trump is behaving, for secondary to what he's doing and implementing, his posture, he's not even angry, right? Like I mean, so many people in this audience have probably seen the Christopher Walken dub over where they've got the about Donald Trump, where it's the lion on the Serengeti, and you know, he just walks around and he's slow and he's old and he's fat, and the hyenas get closer every day and the jackals get closer every day, and then one day the lion gets up and he tears the shit out of everybody to let them know, right? Like, you can see how animals move around a lion. The lion doesn't have to kill them, but they know he can. And I think that's the image that Donald Trump, and speaking of, Donald Trump posted another meme of himself a few days ago, the AI selfie walking on the road with a lion, right? And I think that's the posture he's exhibiting, is like this, the king at his table. And I don't mean in the God King sense. I mean, that is supposed to be the American energy. The American mindset is, this is mine, come and take it. So when he says, yeah, like, we're no longer going to be taxed, we're no longer going to pay to the World Economic Forum, we're no longer going to be subjugated by NATO and the Paris Climate Accords, we're going to use trade wars with everybody. Like, he is just saying, I'm not asking you, I'm telling you what I'm doing. The lion doesn't ask for a seat at the table, he eats. And Trump is eating right now, and the American people are eating. We're eating. The next 4 years, we're going to eat whatever the fuck we want to eat. We're going to do whatever we want to do. And you said something earlier about these other countries. The white pill for these other countries, I think, is that you can do this too. Like, America first can be reflected by Canada first, can be reflected by Germany first, and Russia first, and on down the line. That just seems to be the major energy takeaway I'm getting from him in the last week.
Yeah. And just one more thing to the bloodlines argument. I mean, you take a look at all of the presidents and, you know, largely people who are in power in the United States, and you can trace all of them back to these blue bloodlines in Europe. I don't think that's a coincidence. You trace Donald Trump back, and he goes straight back to fucking William Wallace. Okay, I mean, he's a Scotsman. All right, he's like a first generation American because his mother came here from Scotland, and that's incredible. Okay, he's got that spirit that you mentioned there in terms of the idea of that old lion. I mean, like, you know, Donald Trump. He doesn't seem like he's exerting a ton of energy. I mean, he's having a lot of fun.
He looks younger than ever, man. Like, his energy looks younger than ever.
Yeah. I mean, he's just like moving through life with purpose, okay? And I mean, like, he's not stressed out. He knows that he's going to get what he wants, and what he wants is for America to be great again. And it's a beautiful thing to see. And it's something unlike anything we've ever had, certainly in my lifetime. In the office of the presidency. Closest we had was Ronald Reagan. And, you know, unfortunately, towards the end of his administration, he was kind of in the Joe Biden camp. You know, I mean, like, he wasn't all there mentally. And maybe it wasn't as bad as he was portrayed in the media, but I mean, he certainly receded from public view. You know, I think that for Donald Trump's second term, he is going to remain just as visible. He is going to be just as hands-on. And he's already started doing freaking rallies again. Watch him for the next 4 years. He's going to be doing rallies every freaking week all around the country. Guarantee it.
Very well said. You know what's interesting too? Somebody in the chat just said, G.A. Nana said, BB, America first also means we're leading the rest of those countries. And I agree with that, but I think we're leading them by proxy. We're de facto leading them. I don't think we're literally leading them, like we're going to subjugate Canada and et cetera, or bring them into the orbit. There's actually a concept, you know, one of the interesting things about your mileage may vary on how far you take alpha mentality. And I'm not saying it in the context of pickup artists and all this kind of crap of negging women, but animal kingdom stuff, right? Like, there is such a thing as alphas. I have a dog that is part wolf, and trust me, if you do the gentle parenting thing with one of those, you're fucked. That boy needs to know that if he gets out of line, you can pin him down in the yard and that you're not going to stop. I had to do that one day to him. Didn't hurt him. But you have to show them when they're young that you will fight them to the death. Because they want it. They want a strong leader. And my point there is that when it comes to these other countries, psychology has shown, contrary to popular belief, there are usually multiple alphas in a group. And it's possible to have multiple alphas in a group. Interestingly, alphas are okay following a leader as long as they respect the decisions the leader is making and as long as they feel that they are a part of those decisions, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like that's one of those things where wolf pack mentality, it's often misunderstood by people. They're like, oh yeah, there's the alpha. There usually is one who's the big dog, but there are usually like 4 or 5 alpha wolves, and they defer to one that they feel is most capable of making the decisions.
Mm-hmm.
But they recognize that, hey, there's another wolf pack in the next valley. And if there's 5 alphas in this pack, that's a good thing because I think that there's 6 over there. And I think from a nation state perspective, that's what this multipolar idea is about. It's like if you have a strong America, it should attract other strong allies, other strong countries to make themselves into alphas, right? We're not asking for everybody to like get in line behind Donald Trump and behind America and follow us around. We're saying like make something of yourself, become an alpha, and then you can go your own way, or we can do bigger things together than we could do individually.
Absolutely. You can be a strong, confident man doing what you need to do in life, and it doesn't mean that you have to be getting into fights with other dudes all the time, or that you have to be sleeping with 1,000 different women. I mean, it's all about how you carry yourself and about the decisions that you make. And in this instance, I mean, I am more than happy to defer to Donald Trump on the decisions that he's making for the United States of America. And I think that that's one of the places where people get hung up. You know, I mean, that desire the desire to force things into their paradigm, you know, like I believe it should be this way. And so when Donald Trump doesn't do it that way, I'm going to get angry about it. And as you said early in the show, and I've said it so many times myself, I mean, we are not read in. Okay, we don't have the inside baseball on this stuff. So like what we think may be the best solution is not necessarily going to be it. But I mean, we'll find out at the end of the day. I really do trust that Donald Trump is doing what's best for America. And I believe that he and the team that he's assembled are doing it in the best way for the maximum effect that we're going to need to see. And, you know, that's why I'm not worried about any of the people that he's chosen to be in his new cabinet. I think that there was a lot of thought that went into these people. And I think that just looking at the first couple of days in office, I mean, look at how many freaking executive orders they had ready to go on day one. Yeah. You know, I mean, like the transition process began long ago. Okay. I mean, like they sat down and they said
2020, perhaps.
Yes, exactly. Okay. They sat down and they said, you know, okay, what are we going to need to do day one so that we can set this thing in motion? And I do not think that it's coincidental that the State Department and the CIA were the first 2 confirmed cabinet picks. Because as I said earlier, I really do see the CIA as this sort of, you know, malignant cancer inside the U.S. government. And you go back to Donald Trump's first term in office. What was the first thing he did? He went to Langley and he gave a speech to the CIA, totally unannounced. He said, I'm going to build you a new house without columns. Do you know what that means? Do you know what that means? Okay, well, yeah, I know what that means. And they knew what that meant. But a lot of other people were like, what the hell does that mean? You know, okay, there's a reason that he did that. He put them on notice as soon as he came in. And then almost immediately, they just like hit the ground running on trying to make sure that he was not going to be able to do that. But let's be honest, they started this way before he was even the candidate. Okay.
For
like
sure.
There was a slate of Republicans and they were like, we're going to make sure that no matter who this is, that is going to be the candidate, we're going to be able to control them. We don't even think that it's going to be Donald Trump. And then it got to the point where it was obvious it was going to be Donald Trump and they had to scramble. They were like, oh my God, what are we going to do? He's totally clean. There's not a thing that we can get on him. There's no blackmail. There's nothing that we can do. We're just going to have to make it up. So then they did. He wins mystifyingly. And he comes in and he says, CIA, I'm looking at you. I'm going to take you out because I know how bad you are. Now, here we are in his second term. We have a new CIA director who is going to do just that, I believe. John Ratcliffe was nominated by Trump in his first term. There was no way they were going to allow him to take power at that point. But in the intervening time, Donald Trump has proven to them that he is, in fact, the man, okay? And he has people who are backing him up, and he has the will of the American people. So To deny Donald Trump is really to deny the American people, and the American people are on the edge of revolt at this point. They know exactly who has destroyed their lives. And so the people in D.C. who would otherwise stand in Donald Trump's way, they're not really going to be able to do it in such a public way. Otherwise, they're going to get flogged publicly on Truth Social, just like the president of Colombia, just like Trudeau in Canada, all these people. So the State Department is the sister agency for the CIA. They're the public face. They set up embassies. The CIA has missions inside those embassies. They send their spies out there acting as ambassadors, and then they can go and they can operate inside these countries doing clandestine operations, sometimes on behalf of the United States, sometimes on behalf of compartmentalized programs that nobody knows about. And we have to take care of those two sections of the federal government first, I truly believe. And that's what's most important. So now it's all going to branch out from here. Now we've got Nome, we've got Hegseth. Everybody is going to be in there. It's going to be a great.
It's amazing stuff, on the well, it's so funny. Not so Freudian slip. I call them the Deep State Department in my writing all the time. So I was just about to say the Deep State Department. What's funny on them? I've got Russia on the mind. One of the little autismo things I noticed during the Biden administration when it came to Russia is I tend to read a lot of Russian media and Russian like their State Department, their Sergei Lavrov and their statements, etc., just to see what stories they're selling, not because I necessarily believe that they're telling all the truth. But I had pointed out on the Power Hour several times over the last few years that Vladimir Putin, Sergei Lavrov, they very, very rarely would reference Joe Biden or the U.S. presidency, but they would often reference by name people in the State Department. Mm-hmm. They would often reference Antony Blinken, Victoria Nuland, who you mentioned 2014, the Maidan coup. That was Victoria Nuland's baby. Yep. She was basically ran point on Maidan. Mm-hmm. So, one of the other terms I used to use is the archipelago idea that you can believe that Joe Biden was a controlled asset of patriots, and believe that the deep state, that the State Department was the deep state, and they were trying to undermine everything, which I think explains why they were so frustrated with Biden the whole time.
Oh yeah,
Biden's not doing what they want him to do. Because of devolution, the executive branch doesn't seem as powerful as it should be. And I think that Putin and Lavrov were often goading the State Department and saying Blinken said this and Nuland said this and the State Department said this. Lavrov would constantly talk about them, would never talk about Biden. Mm-hmm. I think in a roundabout way that's disclosure. I also think, in keeping with the animal theme tonight, you mentioned kind of earlier that the deep state, they thought Trump was maybe a blip. They thought he was a speed bump. In the animal kingdom, I sort of think of the term bluff charge. Have you ever seen a video of a bear charging hunters or something? Mm-hmm. I think that's what a lot of them believed the first Trump admin was.
Yeah.
And, the deep state was reading the Q drops. Mm-hmm. But I think some of them were terrified from the beginning and knew that it was real.
Oh, yeah.
But I think others, they're not actually going to do this. How are they actually going to take us all out, right? It's like when you threaten a mob boss and the mob boss has been in power for a long time.
Right.
They might think that you want them out of power, but they don't think you're going to be able to do it. And I think we talked about Trump's posture, but I think we're seeing, whether it's the World Economic Forum, the Federal Reserve, these other countries, I think they know that the bear is in the room with them, right? The lion is in the room with them right now, and it wasn't a bluff charge. And now they're trying to figure out, do we play dead with the bear? Or do we try to get out of here? And that's kind of also fun to watch. As much as the winning is fun to watch, it is fun to watch how our enemies are reacting to all of this.
It is. It's extremely gratifying, and to that point, I don't think there's anywhere to run. You know, they just arrested a cartel boss that was wanted by the United States government. I think he was on a beach in Europe or something like that. They were watching his wife's Instagram, and she posted a picture on the beach, and so they had the Europeans pick him up, maybe Interpol. But you know, one final point that something that we had mentioned earlier, the child trafficking angle on this. You know, the amount of guilty people that are involved in these terrible things. Not only just, generally crimes against America, but specifically crimes against children. It's a vast number of people. And the news of 300,000 missing migrant children came out during the Biden regime. Like a year and a half ago? I mean, that's not like a new figure. That's been out there for a while. And they could never figure anything out. Well, that's because they facilitated it. And they were trying to hedge their bets that they would never have to worry about it. Trump comes into office. This is less than 1 week, and they've already located 85,000 of them. And they've already announced investigations and criminal actions against the people who facilitated that. That's not just going to be faceless bureaucrats. That's going to be multinational organizations, non-governmental organizations, very well-known 501c3s, tons and tons of people. Okay. I think that, think about how difficult it was, how difficult to reconcile the idea of a federally authorized child trafficking program was to swallow.
It's paradigm shattering.
Yes.
Like you either make it through that and then you never go back, or you stop at that wall and you back away.
Yeah, exactly. Well, now that federally funded child trafficking ring is going to be revealed as a result of that revelation, the 300,000 missing children. But because it didn't start there, because that was an extension of something else, that now leads to the rest of it. And the entire sick network can be brought down in a very public way without having to be derided by mainstream media as some Pizzagate conspiracy. This isn't because some anon walked into a pizza joint. This isn't because somebody handed off some intel from 4chan to the FBI. This is the incoming Trump administration cleaning up the mess of the last regime and bringing it to the people immediately and allowing it to soak in. And 85,000 children, imagine that. Throughout the entire last quarter of the Biden regime, they couldn't figure out where those kids were, in quotations. Now, in less than 1 week, the brand new Trump administration has already uncovered the location of these children. Okay, so that's 85,000. Where's the rest of them? Where's the other 225,000? That will come. We'll figure that out. How many of them are dead? How many of them are actively being trafficked today? Where exactly were they found? I mean, the implications for this are enormous. But now it is a fully revealed operation being delivered to the American people. And the narrative is that the Biden regime knew about it, the Biden regime facilitated it, and the Biden regime was either too stupid to figure out where these kids were, or they were complicit in the fact that they were being sex trafficked. Okay. And now people are going to swallow that pill way easier than they would have when we were going through James Alefantis's Instagram and revealing things, making videos about Rachel Chandler, Bill Clinton on Jeffrey Epstein's plane. Everything will be revealed. It's all going to go from one to the next. And I think it's going to make it, it's going to be difficult for a lot of people, but I think it's going to be easier than if it was just us.
And very well said. It's funny, at the beginning of the show and even before the show, we had talked about almost the inverse cognitive dissonance that's hitting some truth community people, because this week is surreal. A lot of us did think it was coming in this community, but you never really know until it's there, right? Mm-hmm. You never know if there's another rug pull. But because the last week maps so cleanly onto those original drops and the original promises of the Trump era, on the normie layers, we're talking about the golden age, make America great again, which are seismic, right? These are huge things. We're talking about little things like curing cancer, all that kind of stuff. And that's amazing. An energy revolution, AI boom, no taxes anymore. Like, these are fever dream things that are on the normie layers right now.
Yeah.
But to your point, I think that means we are, like, I've felt this forever, but you have your doubts through all this stuff through the years. I am convinced that you're absolutely right and that we are going to get that. When Trump signed the executive order the other day, declassifying the JFK, RFK, and MLK files, did you catch? He said, all will be revealed, right? And as I often say with Donald Trump, and as you mentioned with his Langley visit, people are finally on board with the idea that he tells you a lot more in the things he says. He's not just talking about JFK and MLK. He's talking about everything, like biblical, get the millstones ready. And again, going to the drops, I mean, this can transition us sort of into the other stuff I want to talk about, which is, the second half of the show. There is a panic button. I need to introduce a panic button for my guests.
Okay.
If they just cannot deal with it. No, we're not going to do a whole other half. But I did want to talk about the role of Anons and everything, and this just merges us into that, the golden age. But going back, one of the notes I wrote down for this show was, you set me up perfectly for it, was retroactive disclosure. I think that the point you made about trafficking, look at day one. Look at, it was either the 20th or the 21st. We had El Paso shut down.
Yep.
We had X number of troops at the border. And I just mean to normies, that's not current disclosure alone. It's retroactive disclosure that, hold on, wait a second. You told me, first of all, that I was a racist for years for thinking that we should have a wall. Then they mapped Overton's goalpost and kept retreating until eventually the argument was, just like Obama's magic wand economy argument, well, we can't do anything about the border even if we wanted to.
I don't have the power to do that. Yeah. Congress needs to authorize more.
So I think part of the strategy of this, I saw the media using the term Trump is flooding the zone. And, I was using the term blitzkrieg. Like, it's this winning cascade. It's not just a moralization effort. I think it's a disclosure effort of Trump saying, I am not just showing you that I'm going to keep these promises. I'm showing you that they could have the entire time and that all of these things were malicious and not ignorance or incompetence. And to your point with the crimes against children in my writing, I often call that the darkest path in the info war. It's the one that radicalized a lot of us. Like, I was ranting to Mrs. Bright 8 years ago about this stuff. It was wreaking havoc on all of my relationships. I'm sure that this is many of us, right? But I'm proud of myself and I'm proud of the people in this community that didn't stop, right? Like, we never stopped, because when you do think about those kids, like, as cliche as it is, that is what it's about. And that's the stuff to keep in mind. I do firmly believe not only will it be revealed, it has to be. That stuff has to be revealed. And that's where I want your take on this. Like, I can get frustrated with people who are like, there's too much hopium going on and everything, because I think things are actually getting better. But I do agree with the sentiment that I'm not okay with mollifying the normies when it comes to the darkest truths that we have been exposed to. And I think that there were even hints in the drops that there was disagreement among patriots about disclosure, right? Like, and I'm curious your thoughts on that. When we talk about everything being revealed, how far do you think that goes when it comes to the mainstream, here it is, guys?
I mean, I'm fully in favor of total disclosure. I mean, I understand that things are probably going to be revealed in a softer way than perhaps, just coming out with the darkest possible aspect of it. Yeah. Like, I mean, you have to tenderize a steak before you put it on the grill, right? Okay. You've got to soften it up a little bit. You've got to do that with the mind of the average American as well. And so that's why you start with the 85,000 kids that they mysteriously found in less than a week in the new administration. And it goes to show you exactly what you said. I mean, they had the power. They could have stopped this the entire time, but they never intended to. I mean, they didn't want to stop it because they're evil, okay? They're pushing us towards a total collapse of the United States, which would then necessitate joining a global order, a new United States where the Constitution is a living document and things are not going to be the way they were before. Your speech is curtailed so that you're safer. Guns are taken away so you're safer. Illegals are let into the country because it's better. You should go ahead and allow your children to do drugs because why not? Of course, they can be any gender that they want to be because that's totally cool. And then it's easier to rape them when they get older. You know, all of the darkest things you can possibly imagine. I mean, people have been working up to a number of these things. But at the end of the day, if we don't do total disclosure and if people are not exposed for the part they played and for, you know, their sociopathic and psychopathic natures, then those people are just going to burrow away. They're just going to go into hide in a bunker someplace. And then after President Trump is gone, they'll come back and they'll try to, you know, infiltrate again and buy politicians. And, you know, I think that as in terms of like, you know, like our continuing role as we go forward, you know, I don't think there's anything wrong with, you know, asking questions or, you know, making suggestions. But like, I will always have a certain reverence for the decision-making prowess of Donald Trump. I do believe that what we're seeing play out right now is not something that in a snap of a finger was just a decision that was made. I think that we're looking at something that was years in the making. A lot of planning that went into this, a lot of forethought. And so it's happening in the way that it should. But we have to keep the government honest. It's only through active participation by the populace that we're going to be able to make sure that that happens. People went to sleep during the 20th century. People just expected that because the United States was the greatest country on planet Earth, that we could assume that our elected officials were going to be doing the right thing. That's not necessarily the case. And the people who are running for office are not necessarily the ones that are best suited for it. Oftentimes, they're just the ones who got the most money. They're the ones who are blackmailed, and so therefore they can be controlled by whatever agency it is that's standing behind stage with them. We have to keep them held to account. We've got to continue to put pressure on the government to ensure that our rights are sacrosanct and that they don't end up being eroded away any further. We've got to make sure that things get rolled back a certain way. And we've got to ensure that the United States is strong for future generations. I mean, the children are so important for so many reasons, but I mean, they're the ones who are going to inherit the country. I want to make sure that the next generation of Americans inherits a country that is better than what we got. And, you know, it used to be the idea that every generation would get something better than what their parents had. And then that just sort of
that got inverted.
Yeah, totally inverted. And we can't have that anymore because you can't backslide much further. Otherwise, the nation's going to be destroyed. In a very short period of time, Donald Trump has already, I mean, like I said at the beginning of the show, I mean, I don't think it's any coincidence either that in that picture that he shared in relation to Colombia, he looks like a gangster. Okay. Yeah. He looks like he should be carrying a Tommy gun. All right. And I mean, like, hey, you know, you come in guns blazing if you want to win. All right. You know, you take people by surprise and you just make strong decisions and you don't give anybody an opportunity to ask questions about why it's happening that way. You immediately fire people. You immediately get rid of all the red tape. You roll back all of the bad things that were done under the last administration. People were upset about prescription drug prices. You know, that's, as we were saying in the chat, I mean, that's a Soviet-style price-fixing scheme. Okay, you don't want the government to be involved in business and industry in that way. Okay, you don't want them telling the companies that are producing drugs, you have to produce them for this price, even if that means that it's a lower cost than what they cost for you to actually manufacture, because that's only through Medicaid. They're going to make up that price by selling it to people who don't have Medicaid. Okay, so they're still going to be making as much money as they want to, but it's just people who aren't already on government assistance. They're going to be the ones that are making up for that. And then until the point at which their wealth has been drained, and then they also have to go on government assistance, and then everybody is worshiping the state instead of, you know, kneeling before God. I want to see everything come out.
One tiny note on that. Yeah. I want to continue, but one tiny note on that is I saw some people pushing back and being like, oh, what about Trump and Elon? Because Trump's getting rid of the EV mandate. Elon is in favor of ending the EV mandate because of exactly what you said.
Mm-hmm.
Tesla benefits from the EV mandate, but he says Tesla will extra benefit from removing mandates because it's going to force other car manufacturers to compete with Tesla on
Yes.
an open free market, and he knows none of them can. So again, like to your point, when the government is getting involved in artificially lowering the price of things, it raises the price of things because then the manufacturers know they can build the mandates into their pricing models, and they can basically set artificial floors. The government is helping them set an artificial floor. So that blows some MAGA people's minds who still haven't been Elon pilled. He was the one who told Trump to repeal the EV mandate that makes Teslas cheaper because he knows it actually makes them price them higher than it otherwise would.
Yes, absolutely. And somebody in the chat said that, but big business and monopolies are a part of the problem. Oh, they absolutely are. Okay, but I mean, we're not supposed to have monopolies in the United States. The reason they've been allowed to form is because of corrupt bureaucrats who have failed to enforce the laws that we have currently. And of course, the influence of the Central Intelligence Agency and their venture capital funding, which has, largely gone into a bunch of these industries. Also, because a lot of these industries have moved outside of the United States so that they can pay pennies on the dollar to produce something that they could produce here in the United States. Free trade is another huge problem. You could go down the list all night long about things that are wrong here in America. And I, at the end of the day, believe that each and every one of them are going to be fixed. And I think that we're going to be living in a very, very different world. I truly do believe that we are moving into a new golden age. And I couldn't be happier with the way things are going. And if you think that something hasn't happened yet that should have already happened, just remember, it's only been 6 days. It's only been 6 days.
Yeah. Yeah, well said, man. It's funny, earlier when you were talking about the crimes against children and the trafficking and all of that, one of the terms I use a lot is like translation layers. I mean, the reason I called this show The Narrative, the reason I talk about narrative all the time, it doesn't mean it's because I don't think anything is actually happening. It means that I think that the actuals are being translated to different layers of the collective mind differently, right? So I believe that the choice to know will be yours is not as literal. I don't think it's about like, hey, we're just not going to talk about a lot of this kind of stuff. I think it's that it's implying that just like you would train or teach a kid to try to read a work of literature more closely, right? Close reading. You could read Anna Karenina, or you could read and attempt to understand what is being communicated to you through Anna Karenina, right? So when Donald Trump designates South American cartels terrorist organizations, the normie layer story gets to go, that makes sense. I've seen Breaking Bad. I know what a cartel is. Cocaine, right? Colombia. But we know that the deep state is not metaphorically, literally a cartel that has been in business with these cartels.
Yep.
We've also been told that tier 1 operators are going to be dispatched to round up those cartels and kill them.
Yep.
And that doesn't just mean the cast of whatever the hell Netflix show with Diego Luna. Like, it's not that they're just going to round up the drug dealers and stop the Ozark people from laundering drug money. It means the child trafficking, and it means that if you're one of these American elites that participated in it, or knowingly, keyword in the drops, right? Knowingly facilitated it, you are a terrorist. You are an enemy combatant, not because Q people and Anons and truthers said you were, but you have now been designated by the American government and by the American military enemies of the state, enemies of humanity. And I absolutely think that we are going to see that, which there might be more going on with some of these deportations as well that we'll find out down the line.
We're also going to be able to seize all of their bank accounts, all of the ill-gotten gains, the multi-million-dollar mansions, the 10-car garages filled with Ferraris. I mean, every single corrupt public official that took a bribe from the cartel to look the other way and allow drugs and human trafficking to go through the southern border, they're going to also be considered as people who are aiding and abetting these terrorists. You know, I mean, like the United States has done some pretty heinous things. They have acted swiftly against people that were enemies of the state. And I think we've got more enemies of the state in this time right here in America than we've had probably at any other time in history.
New lady says, listening to Anna Karenina at night, what is it trying to tell me, Phoebe? Reread the train scene.
The idea of, you know, the choice to know will be yours. I've always took it to mean, you know, the information will be there. It will be given to you freely. Will you choose to accept it? Are you going to listen? Are you going to look the other way because it's too difficult? You know, you can make that choice. This is America. All right. I mean, like, you know, there are plenty of people who tune out. I mean, think about how many people tuned out as soon as Joe Biden was inaugurated. You know,
and then came back around. Yeah.
Then came back
around.
Of those. Yeah. There's plenty of them. And the same is going to be true about all of this stuff. And the information will be there. And I think that people just need to make that tough decision. They need to learn. They need to listen. They need to internalize it. They need to use it as fire to fuel themselves so that we can make sure this doesn't happen again.
I also wanted your thoughts on, you mentioned, like, we talked about the AI thing earlier tonight. And one of the things I try to do often is use reverse indicators more than positive indicators. Mm-hmm. So, you know, for everything Trump will say positively, I tend to learn more from how the enemy reacts to things. One of the things that I just kind of had this epiphany recently, talking about futurism, technology. Some of us have been totally right that Trump is going into nuclearization. It's ironic that he's talking about denuclearization when it comes to weaponry, but he's talking about nuclearization when it comes to energy. Mm-hmm. One of the things that I feel that I've noticed is there's a bit of a Luddite-ism baked into Americans, and particularly MAGA, when it comes to AI, the advent of the AI age. And don't get me wrong, I think that these are tools, right? Like, we should look at them and say, hey, these things can be used to manipulate us. Yeah. Newsflash, you've been being manipulated by AI. Look up the dead internet theory. I don't know if you've covered that before, Zak.
I haven't covered it, but I am very familiar with it just in my own research.
You should do that. That'd be an interesting one. It very, very relevant with the AI stuff. But basically, the short version of it is the idea that a lot of your interactions online have probably been a lot faker than you believe, going back way before you knew there were bots and all this kind of stuff. So the white pill on that, in my view, is who told the royal you to fear the future? Who told you to fear robots? Who told you to fear AI? Could it have been the mainstream media, Hollywood propaganda, globalists, right? Who told you the world was ending? Globalists, the World Economic Forum, NATO, the EU, the US government. Who told you that robots are inevitably going to turn on you instead of becoming exponential, incredible human extenders? Terminator, James Cameron told you that, right?
Yep.
And then with AI, who told you that it was inevitably going to turn into Skynet? Now, reverse engineer that and think, man, I reject Hollywood propaganda when it comes to turning my kids gay, but I wholeheartedly accept all of their doom mongering about AI and technology. Could it perhaps be, Zak, that they know if we have access to these kinds of extenders, it's game over for them? That's just what I've been kind of messing with lately.
No, I think you're absolutely right. And it is an interesting dichotomy. I see it in a lot of different things. You know, people will accept a source on one thing that they've internalized and then completely reject it in terms of something else. But this is definitely something that a lot of people have internalized. And it's the same way with liberals and guns, right? You know, I mean, like a gun is a tool, a hammer is a tool, and AI is a tool. You can either use it for good or you can use it for bad. You want to protect yourself or you just want to kill somebody up at the liquor store. You want to build a home or you want to bash somebody over the head. You want to use AI to enrich your workflow, or you want to use it to take over a small company or to crash the stock market, whatever it might be. I mean, all of these things are possible, but it's the same with anything. It's the same with anything. Okay. I mean, even like, think about like drugs, right? Drugs in moderation for specific uses, like the poppy. Okay. The poppy gave rise to opiates. Opiates completely revolutionized pain management for surgery. And if you're out in the field and you've got to cut somebody's leg off real quick, you give them a shot of morphine, you can put them to sleep, and then you can take the leg off, and it's going to be a lot more less traumatic. Prior to that, in the Civil War, they were giving people a fifth of whiskey and telling them to drink it while they slowly sawed their leg off with a hacksaw.
We're going back to that, Zach.
Yeah.
We're bringing it back. Bite down.
It's so funny. Yeah, bite down. But just because something has a possible negative use doesn't mean that has to be the inevitable outcome of it. Okay. And I go back to what I said early in the show. If it's us, if it's the patriots who are controlling the future of artificial intelligence, then I think that we've made one step closer to ensuring that our inevitable AI Skynet overlords don't take over and then decide to nuke the planet.
Yeah. And, for me, it's all about the word asymmetry. I mean, if you think of, you mentioned guns, right?
Mm-hmm.
Whether you're reading real historical accounts of civilizational conquest, or do you just think about this logically? If you show up to a rock fight with guns, the side with guns has an exponential asymmetric advantage over the other side, right? Mm-hmm. Whether they're good, bad, or somewhere in between, they have extreme asymmetry. The Luddite behavior, and I used to fall into this myself. I don't accept myself from it. A great example of this would be the internet. I would say a lot of truthers sort of have negative views on the internet as a technology, even though we sort of live on it and do all the research on it, because they see stuff like censorship, they see stuff like social media and the real damages it has caused to youth. They see the way that the internet can be weaponized in order to change people's minds and to disseminate propaganda and information. That's true. But the thing is, all this stuff we're talking about tonight, whether it's government secrets, CIA overthrows and coups, human trafficking, guess when ignorance is bliss. Nobody knew it was going on a large scale before the internet. As the famous Joe M video posted back in 2017 about the Q-drop said, we became more surveilled than ever in the information age, but so did they.
Yes,
and
yes.
That's the difference. And I think that's the white pill to say, when it comes to thinking about AI, if there is an asymmetry, then absolutely it's an existential threat to the human condition. But if you're now getting access to AI bots and modules, and this is now becoming consumer level competition where corporations are competing to give you access to artificial superintelligence, it will be superintelligence. That is way better than the enemy having access to that and us not having access to that.
Yes.
Which, to your point earlier, if Trump is moving us in this direction, it's not because he's our God King. It's because he's leveling the playing field, in my view. He's saying, like, they've got this shit behind lock and key.
Yep.
Why don't it's time you guys started getting familiar with this.
Yes, 100%. And somebody in the chat just said, I'm sorry, but AI will be used for evil. I'm not saying it won't be. Undoubtedly, it will. In the same way that guns can be used for evil. In the same way that hammers can be used for evil. In the same way that this coffee cup can be used for evil. Is that an argument to take it away from people to be able to use just because somebody might do something wrong at some point in the future? Okay. I'm going to say no. I'm going to say that we need to have it out there. And because it can be used for evil, we need to control as best we can the direction that it goes. Now, here in the United States of America, we have the Second Amendment. We have access to guns. I've got beautiful guns all around my house that I've built.
And
the
on
people,
your shirts.
yes, all over my shirts. The people of Europe are not as lucky. Okay. In the interest of safety, they have had their guns taken away because bad people can do bad things with them. Guess what? Bad people can still do bad things with them because the bad people still have guns and the good people don't have guns. And if you go to the UK, where there are very few guns around, bad people still do bad things, but they just use knives to do it, or they use machetes to do it. Okay. The human condition means that evil exists. Bad people will always exist, and bad people will always do bad things against good people. I think that it is in our best interest to understand that so that we can best protect ourselves from those who would do us harm. And if we level that playing field, as BB said, giving access to these tools, which are inevitable, okay, because they're already out there, then I think that that puts us into a much stronger position. And we can fortify this golden, brand new America that we want to build with tools that at times could potentially be used for evil, and again, undoubtedly will. But if we have them, and we can also use them to protect ourselves, we can also use them to enrich ourselves, we can also use them to make our lives safer and better, then I don't see why we shouldn't have access to them. It's like making an argument against fireworks, right? Because so you can point a mortar at somebody's home and launch it through their window, set their house on fire, and kill them while they're asleep. Does that mean that we shouldn't have awesome fireworks? No. But we just need to do a better job of making sure that people don't grow up to become those types of people.
Right.
We've got psychopathy being bred into our children at the elementary level right now, at like all around us, okay? From the people that are influences on them, to social media, to Hollywood and entertainment. You know, I mean, think about phones, okay? You mentioned surveillance. You know, FISA goes both ways. Of course, it was used to surveil us. It was also used to surveil them. Phones, technology, computers, I mean, it's given us access to tremendous amounts of information. That has set people free in a way that, I said this at GART, it's like the invention of the printing press, right? Okay, when people could print their own books, okay, they could print their own Bibles, they could print their own pamphlets, they could freely spread information around. That was previously only something that the crown could do. Okay,
Right.
now it's in the hands of people. That was extremely dangerous to the powers that be back then. Okay, now here we've got access to technology, the internet, unlimited amounts of information. That's why recently they've tried to crack down on that information. Now we're going in the opposite direction, and we're gaining access to things that I think people didn't have before. These tools, as BB mentioned, the dead internet theory, I've said this for so long, you never know who you're talking to online. Unless you've actually met that person, unless you have had physical interactions with them, no guarantee that that's a real person. Okay, and 9 times out of 10, people that you're getting into petty arguments with on X, or that are egging you on or trolling you, you have no idea if that's a real person. Even if it is a real person, it might be one person running 10, 15, 20 different accounts using some AI technology to help push out psychological oppressive information that's going to
often
put
in
you
our comments section.
Yes, often in our
We've
comments
caught you
section.
doing it. We've caught you doing it, people.
Yeah. So, long story short, there's no way to do it without having the dangers in the world. Just like you can't guarantee that you're not going to walk out of the house and get hit by a car. Okay. Every single time you get in a plane, there is a chance that plane might go down. Does that make you no longer fly? Maybe more often now, just because of the shit with Boeing. But but I mean, just in a general sense, I mean, I take that as a risk.
Man, I love that rant. I gotta get that clipped out. I would sum it up as like optimistic realism. I think the word realism has been conflated with cynicism for too long, and we're taking realism back. We're making reality optimistic again. We're making optimism realistic again. And going back in a silly way to the AI conversation, people in the chat, I know they were joking around saying like, no, I'm going to be John Connor the Luddite. John Connor would agree with us in the Terminator series, because lest you forget, people, in Terminator 2, the greatest of the Terminator franchise, what does John Connor do to fight against the enemy? He programs one of their AI and sends it back in time by using their technology to create an asymmetric, or rather, to rob the enemy of an asymmetric advantage. He very literally uses the enemy's weapon. So if you're going to come at me with Terminator, you ran into the wrong guy. And even on you mentioned like everything from coffee mugs to guns. For me, as a lifelong martial artist, and man, you will start, if you fought competitively or just trained from the time you're like 8 years old, doesn't mean you're the best fighter in the world, but it means you'll watch how normal people interact, and it starts to almost disturb you, the asymmetry that is involved in most interactions, where you're like, man, when you've been training since you're like 10, you just know how to use your body in certain ways, just like guys that know how to shoot guns and have guns in their house. It's like they've got such an asymmetric advantage defending themselves than other people who don't have that. But by the same token, people used to sort of look down on the fight world and be like, man, if you know how to fight, you're probably a violent person. Just like, oh, if you have guns, you must want to do violence. And man, some of the most peaceful people I know are fighters. And why are they peaceful? Because they are capable of violence. And usually people who are capable of violence refrain from inflicting it.
Exactly. Yeah, I mean, I've never been in a physical confrontation and people are like, oh, what are you, afraid to fight? No, I'm afraid that I would kill someone.
That's not a bad thing.
No, I'm afraid that I would kill someone if I got into a fight with them. Okay, and so I don't need to prove myself to anybody. I think the same person who questioned my stance on AI also said, if we can't even hold fair elections, you think that we can take care of artificial intelligence? Well, that's a bit of a misdirect, because we can run free and fair elections. It's just that the people who have been in control of them up until this point were not willing to. They were running fake elections so that they could affect the outcome that they wanted to see each and every time. That's going to change. It will change before the midterm elections. It has to. If it doesn't, then this is not going to work. Okay, there's just no way. There is the ability to do exactly what you want to do with those elections. Just wait. 6 days.
Yeah, absolutely. When it comes to power projection, to put a button on it, there's a quote I absolutely love. I'm going to paraphrase it, but basically goes, if you are incapable of violence, you're not peaceful, you're harmless. To be peaceful, you must be capable of violence, which is obviously the peace through strength refrain.
Yes.
And one of the things I say in my writing all the time, and I think that the Golden Age is ushering us back toward this revelation that the Founding Fathers had. The micro is the macro is the micro, right? That was supposed to be Americanism. It was the individual is the collective is the individual, not in a communistic sense, in a sense that the same way I govern myself, the unalienable rights I have should extend. Sovereignty should radiate outward from the individual. It shouldn't come down and be handed to us. And I think that a lot of the moves we're seeing right now at the advent of the Golden Age are about reminding people of that. Like, you're the ones with the power.
Absolutely. The threat of violence ensures peace. Okay. Knowing that it is a realistic possibility, knowing that if you F around, you just might find out. It's like, why are people generally friendly in Texas? Why are they friendly in Florida? Because everybody's got guns. Okay.
Well said, yeah.
I mean, like, have you ever seen videos where road rage happens? Somebody gets out of a car and they run up to somebody's Silverado and they start mouthing off, and then they just catch a couple of rounds. I mean, like, that's what might happen. Okay. So I mean, like, the same goes, from a micro scale to a macro scale. This is the peace through strength doctrine. You have to be willing to use violence to affect the change that you want to see if someone is going to step up to you. Because if they think that you're not going to, then they're going to walk all over you.
Damn straight.
Yep.
All right, Zach, it's been fantastic having you here. If you want to hang out for a rants and boosts, you can, that I'll run through. Otherwise, if you need to go.
No. Let's do. I've been here long enough. Let's do the rants and the boosts. Yeah.
All right. Much appreciated. As I always say, guys, when you support the show, you're supporting whoever's on it with me. So I really appreciate that. Man, that flew by.
Yeah.
We have to do this again.
Absolutely. Great show.
Yeah. Awesome stuff, man. We don't end up on stream together often.
It's because we both talk so much. Let me tell you what, guys.
Yeah.
I offered to do Devolution Power Hour with John and BB, and John was like, the only reason I wouldn't want to do that is because you both talk so much. And I was like, all right, I understand.
Yeah. Just for the record, Zach, I am fully okay with that. So just so you know that you're not being blocked by any decision of me. But John would also say that about me and almost everybody else at the company, and has before. So, and I get it at times, but it is what it is. maybe the people will get what they want at some point.
I don't know. Hopefully.
Yeah, I don't make those decisions.
This is the people's channel.
Yeah, bombard John if you guys want Zach on Wednesday night. I'm in favor of it. We could just put John will just put timers on us, and plus we could slowly leech the life from him, and I might actually be in favor of that.
Oh, that's funny.
All right, I've got some boost. Thank you guys for using the boost function. We didn't know if you guys would use it when the team put that together, but very happy to see that you are. Let me, I always have to search by this. All right, we've got Joe K89 sent $17 over. This is about last week. Brad and BB, what a great show. I grew up to a Detroit East Sider and could relate as you talked about fighting, neighborhood and school, and ethnic trash talk. Had a great laugh, fond memories. Congrats, BB, on your advice. Find a doctor who won't vax. Yeah, on last week on the narrative, Brad and I ended up rabbit trailing for about 45 minutes about how violent the Northeast was.
Yeah,
and, you know, in a good way, I suppose. I also coined the term make racism funny again when Brad was trying to he was like, we're not racist. And I was like, well, we always were. It's just that it used to be funny. And like, white people are racist against black people are racist against white people, and it's funny, and you can be friends about it. It's not about pretending that there's no differences. That's my personal philosophy.
Did you happen to read? Lisa's she's gonna hit me. The Antioch shooter, his manifesto that he put out.
No.
The other. Oh my God, I won't go into it.
I don't tend to read shooter manifestos, but if it sounded like that, I do not condone it.
No. Definitely do not condone his actions, but. The whole thing was written as a giant troll. Like, it's really unfortunate what happened. But, like, when you're reading it, you're like, I can't believe this is real. But,
Right.
like, it was very clearly written by someone who, like, grew up on 4chan.
Yeah. You know, my point of that was, like, I've had black friend, and that's, like, I hate when people say that. But my brother had a Haitian roommate named Terry, and me and him hit it off, and they were afraid we wouldn't because we were both like fiery personalities. And then we would party hard, some would say too hard. There was actually a Terry rule where after the first night Terry and I went downtown Boston, my brother was sick. I was 21, so he sent his Haitian roommate and me downtown, and we got into a lot of trouble, and we're never allowed to go out with just the two of us again. But I just remember hanging out at that apartment and having fond memories of it because the black guys that were friends with my brother's friend Terry would like roast us and we would roast them. And there was no like tiptoeing. It was just like, we're not pretending we're all the same thing. We have completely different experiences. Mm-hmm. Let's just own it and also roast the ever living shit out of each other about it.
Yeah.
Other boosts. Vicky Dirk, $17. Thanks for your narrative and Substack. Thank you very much. By the way, don't dox my name, but I did make good on my promise to Brad. I sent him a screenshot of my yearbook wherein the memory of me throwing somebody over a table was immortalized. Zach probably saw it in the chat.
Yeah.
Silverback, 1983. I haven't seen you in a while, man. Hope to see you at a GART soon. $100. Congrats for the newest Bright edition and for the upcoming wedding, Zach. Two of my favorite Badlands hosts. You guys are awesome. I hope to see you again in Vegas. Well, I guess
right on, man.
Vegas.
I'll be there. You know it.
Full disclosure, I've been upgraded from 0% chance of going to Vegas to at least 50%, depending on the current mood of Mrs. Bright.
Excellent.
She's
We're going to have to
feeling
get
a little
you
bit better
tuxed.
about the baby. So, you know, I'd say put pressure on her, but that'll probably make it worse. So that's where we're at right now. Zach will be there.
Is Mrs. Bright in the chat tonight, or is she with,
she was earlier
with Junior?
Yeah, if you've got logistics question, I saw a text come through. Logistics question for Mrs. Bright. Listen, I don't take that shrapnel anymore. If you want to wade in there with Mrs. Bright, you are welcome to.
Yeah, Mrs. Bright, I'll be messaging you later on.
Yeah. All I'll tell you is when I told her I got that text before I went on, she went, "I told you. Told you he was going to do something."
Hey, listen, it was just, it's like, I know she's with the baby and I know that you were about to be on the show with me. So I just thought, I'd bridge the gap. Just throw it out there. It's like when you're trying to catch carp and you're just throwing like balls of Wonder Dough or Wonder Bread out into the pond.
She did tell me recently that I'm the worst one at she was like, you going to the Garts, I thought we're going to keep everybody else in line. And she's like, you know less about what's happening at the Garts than the people you're supposed to be wrangling if she can't make it to one.
Yeah.
But
I'm kind of that way with Lisa down here. Like, I am very bad with directions. Like, I don't know where anything is in Florida. And Lisa has already committed all of it to memory. And I think it's probably because of like the hurricane stuff. But like all the time, I'll just be like throwing like numbers out there, like, you know, distance or the length of time it's going to take us, which side of the state. And she's like, no, you're wrong. You know, I don't know. She doesn't know how I can't figure it out, but it's just not computing. I've got a lot of other things on my mind.
Exactly. Yeah. You know, genius takes a certain bandwidth, right,
Yes,
Zach?
yes.
And when we're redlining our mind, our big, beautiful brains like this, it doesn't leave room for trivial concerns like the laundry and how do I get places and will there be food at the VIP dinner, which was a question I asked Mrs. Fright recently. I mean, people of a certain enlightenment just can't be expected to figure these things out. All right, rants. Tom Terrific, $50. He said what he meant, and he meant what he said. Trump is truthful 100%. Very well said.
Absolutely.
Micro Toolmaker, $117. Been very generous recently.
Thank you.
BB, this show is getting better and better each week, and I learn stuff too. Where we go one, we go all. Well,
Appreciate it.
Thank you. Annie BU, $17. Thank you, both of you. My first time here. Can't wait to hear about the Golden Age info. Yeah, I think we told everybody everything about the Golden Age. You guys can just you don't have to watch anything else anymore.
No, never. But I am live every day at 5 p.m. Monday through Thursday.
Damn straight.
Yeah.
One of the OGs. The OG. Moke Anon, $5. I voted for Biden in the primary in Michigan in 2020, which is an open primary, just so I could help the clown show proceed. I love that.
You're brave.
Yep. Mrs. Bright used to think I was joking when I said I am still a registered Democrat in Massachusetts. I just keep it there because, first of all, I don't believe in primaries, and I know people get mad at me for that. I don't participate in them. But also, I like to think that I screw up their statistics just that one little bit. Matrix Break, MAGA. Thank you. G. Henry, $5 regarding Melania's PSYOPs attire on Inauguration Day. Spy versus
Spy. Yes, she did look spy versus spy. Very spy versus spy.
She did. Yep. I like it. Sleep State. What do you think about Trump's statement on moving Gazans to Egypt and Jordan?
Well,
Ghost would probably be the guy to ask. But
you know, I mean, there is quite literally nothing left in Gaza. I mean, it's a hollowed out shell of what it used to be. And I don't know. Maybe I really don't know what else to say other than that. I mean, certainly it would be friendlier for them, but I think that the people who live in Gaza would obviously take great offense to being moved out of what they consider to be their ancestral homelands. Yeah.
Yeah. I've been referring to the Middle East as the Kobayashi Maru, the impossible task.
It really is.
I think it's another reason Trump was strategically off the game board when this stuff was going on.
Yep.
Not saying that everything over there is the plan of, bad things happening. I just mean the knots being untangled, it seems. Julie JN, $10. On the Zuck thing, the company my hubs works for is building a $10 billion AI data center in Louisiana for Meta. Had to be in the works for at least a year for environmental studies, etc. Great show. Thanks.
Thank you.
Awesome. I bet it will be used for other things in a good way. Bell South, $10. In Elon's address to Germany, he stressed that they shouldn't feel guilty for the sins of the fathers and grandfathers.
It's an excellent point.
I didn't see him say that, but I did see that he had spoken to them. So that's great. We made the same point tonight. Good shit.
Mm-hmm.
Gem for me, how do you think this will go down in history with regards to Biden? How are they going to depict number 46?
Well,
as
I mean,
our boy blue.
If he is still remembered as a president, then I think that, generally speaking, the American people will perceive him as probably the worst president that we've ever had. I think that among plenty of people, he will be remembered fondly only for the fact that he helped to usher in the greatest age that America has ever known. But on a personal level, I think that Joe Biden will be remembered as a kitty diddler and one of the most corrupt politicians America has ever had. Probably an example of what not to emulate if you want to do the right thing. It would be great, though, if we get full disclosure on the 2020 election and Biden's presidency is simply erased and it's remembered as sort of a lost 4 years. And, you know, I mean, like, have you watched Silo?
The show, no, but I did read the first book, the Hugh Howey book.
Okay, yes, the Hugh Howey book, yes. So not many people that I know have read Silo. Yeah. So, you know, in Silo, they're constantly talking about the founders, and they talk about you know, the revolution that Mechanical tried to lead against the silo. And so they look back at that time, like, those are the dark times. You know, we don't want that to happen again. And it's like a story that parents will tell their children when they want them to be afraid at night, basically. And so I think that we'll look back on that 4-year period as like sort of the darkest times when, you know, like we had the possibility of absolutely losing everything, watching it slip away. But then it'll be like, you know, you know, like the Odyssey at the end, you know, this triumphant return where, you know, we come back, we take it from them, and we're able to build something beautiful from a horrible time.
Well said. And, you know, my retardation goes in some weird directions, and I don't know if I'm right or not, but sometimes I think that there is some good narrative seeding being done in some sectors of Hollywood. You just mentioned the Odyssey. Christopher Nolan movies are chock full of really interesting stuff. And his next movie, which is quite shocking to Hollywood, is going to be a telling of the Odyssey, apparently.
With Tom Holland.
Yep. He's known for sci-fi and stuff like that. He's never done an epic or anything. So what an interesting time during Trump 2.0 for a huge, big budget auteur version of the Odyssey. Keith O'Higgins.
Ray Fiennes is in it too, I think.
Yeah. Keith O'Higgins. BB, I disagree with you saying it's Gunnell's razor. Occam's razor only explains the simplest version of a narrative. Patrick's razor is hijacking of Hanlon's razor. Stupidity explains Biden's rule. Maybe Patrick took it. Just renamed it. Sassbrag, $20. Love the show. Thanks for what you do. Agree on Boston points. Coming from Falmouth on the Cape, we aren't the most agreeable bunch. Nope. No, we are not. Agate, great discussion from a couple of great guys. Much appreciated.
Thank you.
1B Fish, $10. BB, when you speak, I keep my dictionary close. Your collaboration with Red Pill tonight was one of the most interesting talks of my Badlands experiences. The narrative is a must-watch. Hello, Zach.
Thank you very much, IB Fish. Appreciate that, bud.
We have been voted two of the most interesting men in Badlands. Keith O'Higgins. AI fear by technophobes goes back to 2001. Kubrick mailed foreign policy and military-industrial complex merged with Dr. Strangelove. He then exposed politics and sex with Eyes Wide Shut. Yeah, Keith, watch Story Hour. We did both of them. So, way ahead.
I really want to see the original cut of Eyes Wide Shut, like the director's cut. That's one thing that I'm hoping would be released.
Yeah. Tom Cruise is
awesome.
an interesting fellow, too.
Yeah.
Connections to Oracle. Another guy who was smeared. I'm not saying he's a patriot. I'm just saying sometimes reverse indicators like, man, back in the normie era, they really ostracized him and made him into a crazy cult leader. And was he? I don't know. Wild Boar, BB talks a lot, but Red Pill has a lot of information too. I think we both talk a lot. Yeah. The Anti-Karen, great show. This was a meaningful way to mark this beautiful week in history. Thank you. It has now been codified. Week 1 of the Golden Age officially.
Great
Ready
way to cap it.
to rumble. Chris, enjoyed the show, fellas. Thank you. Team Smooth, FYI, kudos to Cavaltra and JBA512, both generous with multiple subscriptions. Yeah, thanks, guys. It doesn't aggregate those for us when you guys gift subs, but we can see them come through, and we really appreciate that. That helps everybody at Badlands. James Klain, love listening to you guys for $10. Thank you.
Thank you.
And then Kitty Kubiak rounds out the show. You guys are delightful together. Wish I could give more. SSI doesn't come until February 3rd. Everything is appreciated, and nothing is appreciated if you can't donate to everything. I know we say that. I always forget to say this. If you guys hit the thumbs up button, it really helps these shows. Like it meaningfully helps every show at Badlands, if you like it, to just remember to be logged in and hit the thumbs up button. That's how it gets on the leaderboard. I never asked for it, but please take the 1 second to hit the thumbs up button. Do that for every show that you like. Hit the thumbs down button on people who I want to defeat within Badlands. But, you know, other than that,
So we
Thank
actually
you
got
so much.
20 thumbs down tonight. That's actually only 1%. So it's a 99% like to dislike ratio. So not too concerned about it. But yeah.
But often the top voted comment will be negative. Strange how that works, right?
Are you saying I'm AI?
Thank you so much for joining the show, Zach. I hope you will again.
I will. Yeah, I had a great time.
Demand it. It's a high power level. What you know what's really going on with John is he gets a little concerned when the power level rises to a certain degree, I think is what's going on. As always, I am going to outro with the intro. Enjoy the second week of the Golden Age. I'm sure nothing will happen. And thanks for stopping by. Share the show far and wide, please. Check us out. Do you want to plug anything you got coming up? Or Conspiracies tomorrow?
Baseless Conspiracies tomorrow at 10:30. I'm live on my own channel at 5 p.m. Eastern, Monday through Thursday, and then Fridays and Saturdays at 9. And then I'm also on Badlands Wednesdays at 9 with Brad Getz on Altered State, which is also another great show. Oh, and then Fridays at 4. I almost forgot about Fridays at 4. Taking It Back with Adel and Frank.
Damn straight. I gotta get on that show at some point.
Oh, dude,
Brad. I'm glad to see people are liking the Where We Go On, We Go All After Dark. Brad is a night owl like me. Well, he's an Alaskan. I don't know what you call those, but I'll often watch that show. It's good stuff he does.
It is.
If you guys want to check it out, Trump's Trick, burningbright.substack.com. It's free. I will convince you that the metaphor doesn't just fit. It might have been intentional. Donald Trump is a 3-act structure of a magic trick. Check it out. Otherwise, as I always say, the war is a story. The story is a war. Act accordingly. Peace out.
We were sleeping. I've been sleeping. I've been turning away from a truth I wanted not to face. There is a wound that won't heal at the center of the galaxy. There is a darkness reaching like rust into everything around us. We let it grow, and now it's here.
How many men have you killed, my lord?
I don't know.
50? 100? Countless.
Countless has a nice ring to it.
And how many lives have you saved?
500,000. Population of King's Landing. Tell me if your precious Randy commanded you to kill your own father and stand by while thousands of men, women, children burned alive, would you have done it? Would you have kept your oath then?
Our time has come. We prepared. We grew stronger. While you rested in your cradle of power, you were trusted to lead the Republic. But you were deceived. You assumed no force could challenge you. Now, finally, we have returned.
The visions are clear now. I see possible futures all at once. Our enemies are all around us. And in so many futures they prevail. But I do see a way. There is a narrow way through.
It's not a prophecy. It's a story that you keep telling, but it's not their story, it's yours. They deserve to be led by one of their own. What your people did to this world is heartbreaking.
We gave them something to hope for.
That's not hope! We have survived by hiding from them, by running from them. But they are the gatekeepers. They are guarding all the doors, they are holding all the keys, which means that sooner or later, someone is going to have to fight them.
I wish none of this had happened.
So do all who live to see such time, but that is not for them to decide. All we have to decide is what to do with the time that is given us.
Forgive me. I did not see. I have failed you all. You will bring me. John, I do not know what strength is like that. I swear to you, I will not let the White City fall. Our people fail. Our people. Our people. I wish you good fortune in the wars to come. And now it begins.
No. Now it ends.